and we don't have to feel rushed. But if worst case scenario, if we still have stuff to talk about and I have to go, we can always come back to it either later today or tomorrow.
Okay.
If that's really necessary,
That's fine.
So.
I'm just going to flip that and flip that. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Yo, guys, it's me, Matrix, here, coach of the Welsh Wailords, bringing you week 5 of the UGA Draft League Power Rankings. So, joining me today, we have got Masenko of the Drowsy Dracozols.
Howdy.
And Bryan of the Charlotte Beedrills.
What's up, guys?
So it's just us three again, the three amigos. Carmine A wasn't able to join, and Oddball hasn't been able to join either. So maybe we're looking to.
We are the three amigos.
Yes. Maybe we're looking to getting one of the coaches from the league joining us in this later half of.
I know Tyler said he wanted to at some point. I know Tyler.
Yeah.
He said he wanted to.
So be pretty cool to get some other guests on here. To be fair.
Yeah.
I can't believe we've reached the halfway point. So
crazy. Yeah.
So sorry.
I say it's been a good season so far. So it's I'm excited to see where it goes. Very competitive, especially this.
Definitely. And this week, as you say,
really
this week was wow. We'll just get into it, shall we? So
yeah.
There are 2 games to be played as of yet, which is the London Lucarios and the Orlando Oshawots. Just before we do that, I know we're midstream. I'm just going to double check I am recording audio because I'm not having that issue again as I did last week. That's fine. Yeah, it's all doing. So we got the London Lucarios versus the Orlando Oshawots, and this is a game that's been delayed indefinitely, and we'll get into that in a minute. The Lily Cove Marowaks versus the Aggie / Blades. That is a match that's going to be moved to Makeup Week at the end of the season. Either that or they'll look to play their match as soon as they possibly can. Now, we might as well just preface at the start. The Orlando Oshawots will be dropping from the league, won't they?
Oh,
I know. It's unfortunate that they've had to go, but a lot of commitments in real life and their school exams, work. Draft leagues can be very demanding for your time. So we completely understand that real life comes first. This is a bit of fun at the end of the day. We're sad to see him go. He was doing really well, and it is what it is.
It was a good addition to our podcast.
Oh, 100%.
I'm really sad to see him go. I think he certainly was very helpful for me in a couple of weeks with prep and just overall a really chill, cool dude to hang out with. Yeah. So we'll miss you, Oddball. Please, if you have the time, we'd love to have you back next season. Since
100%.
we all think
we love Oddball to be here for season 3.
Yeah.
And if he gets time in the upcoming weeks to watch some of the matches, he's always welcome back on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
As it stands, I don't think we're going to have a replacement takeover from the Orlando Oshawots as we're already mid-season.
Right.
So maybe some of his scheduled matches will be redone and played with who he was intended to play, playing each other. So the 6 players he's got to play against will be facing each other just to complete their 10-week game, and that will be taking place at the end of the season.
Sweet.
Okay. So with the departure of our beloved Orlando Oshawots and Oddball, we move on to the first game of the week, which actually, coincidentally, was one of the first games. So Somerville Scraggies versus the South Croydon Saws. Now, the South Croydon Saws going into this week were they second in the leaderboard?
Yeah, they were second in the overall leaderboard, but they were first on our power rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they had an insane. I think they had a record that was undefeated as of this week. Before this week.
Right.
But as you'll see, they got 2-0'd, which is honestly not super surprising. I think obviously the Somerville Scraggies have been on the up and up and proving to all of us that they are a top tier team.
Mm-hmm.
So this was really a very informative match into how powerful the Somerville Scraggies are. Being able to 2-0 the South Croydon Swords, who up until now had been undefeated, had beaten a lot of the top teams, including myself, the Oshawots. Had you played? Have either of you played them?
Played them.
I play them week.
They're not on my.
Sorry, yeah, I play them week 10.
Okay.
So
they're not on my schedule. So
right. Myself and Oddball had both lost to them already, and we had been decently, we'd already been doing well. To this point, I haven't lost anything else other than to them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which goes to show that I think they're a very, very strong team. So all the kudos to Tyler for this win. Absolutely fantastic. And we can talk about the match.
I actually, just to go on from that, I believe the Oshawots the only two matches they'd lost were against the South Croydon Swords and the Somerville Scraggies. They lost only to them. So this was actually a matchup of two of the strongest players in the league.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and for it to be such a comprehensive win as well, because there wasn't a great deal of like upset that happened during the match, like RNG and stuff. It was quite a well-controlled game from the Somerville Scraggies, and I'd say quite a comprehensive victory.
Yeah,
the only thing that might qualify as RNG is the Comfey taking both the Sledge Wave and the Rock Slide, and not getting flinched to set Trick Room.
Yeah. The Somerville Scraggies came in with an insanely well prepped plan. Like they've been clearly holding on to some of this strategy for a few weeks, and like they thought, this is the time to do it. So what they did was a very clever eject button Togekiss, who was paired in a lead with Comfey. So the Togekiss, the plan is Togekiss follow me's, Comfey sets Trick Room. Ideally, what happens then is they attack the Togekiss. Togekiss gets switched out because of the eject button, bringing in the Regirock. Trick Room goes up, and now they can just simply priority Giga Drain this max Regirock with weakness policy and just sweep, which is exactly what happened game 1. Game 2, the same lead comes out, and South Croydon Swords they
adapted.
They adapt to this, yeah. So what they do is they Sludge Wave, chunking the Comfey and activating the eject button. This is the Sludge Wave user was Tornadus.
Tornadus.
Which I think is an insanely good tech. I will say, even though this loss happened, I do think that the South Croydon Swords had some very good tech and plays that they made throughout this match. So what they did is they Sludge Wave, and then Darmanitan just Flare Blitzes into the Comfey now that the Togekiss is switched out, and he doesn't have to attack into it anymore because of the eject button. So
and this Darmanitan is choice banded.
So then, because of that, they don't get the Trick Room up, but it's still a pretty comprehensive victory at that point anyway. This Regirock is just so tanky, sets up Sandstorm, is not taking any special damage. And of course, this Togekiss can still redirect for it, and he has, I forget what the fourth Mon was. Goodra, right. And he gets this Goodra out to back it up, start doing some big damage as well. All under Sandstorm, so that they're getting chipped, and there wasn't a whole lot to stop this Regirock. It doesn't, and you get,
So, just to reiterate some points I had about the game, so you're facing off against a really well thought out plan, I think, of the Somerville Scraggies. Yes, the South Corner Saws did lead a mode that had double spread moves to try and
Mhm.
pick up that KO on the comp phase if needed. And it did just fall short game one.
Yeah.
However, when you're facing a Regirock and a Gudra, man, that's one of the highest defensive stats and the highest special defensive stats in the game.
Yeah.
And you've got a max Regirock just max quaking and boosting that Gudra even more, especially against such a specially offensive team such as the South Croydon Saws. I mean, he brought
Mhm.
Tornadoes, Indeedee, which was Scarf. I think that was a little bit of
Artillery came game 2 at least.
Artillery, which again, if it's having to rely on its ability like to get these crits with Sniper. I don't know if it was Sniper, but I think that could have been a good idea.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know if
one
it
of the,
ever. It also gets Moody, but I don't think it got any Moody boost. So I don't think it was running Moody.
I think one of the things that was a little bit of a well, why do you do that? Was he brought Tornadoes, and I don't think Tornadoes was the best bring in this matchup. I think the
Mm.
South Carolina Saws got a bit reliant on Tornadoes because of it through the weeks. It's been doing really well. However, I think if you're going to be using your lead to do a sludge wave, which is what it looked like he was planning on doing for like a comfy to prevent that trick room and the redirection, you're kind of better off just bringing Gengar. I mean, he's got access to Gmax Gengar, and it's a mod
Yeah.
he hasn't really utilized up to this point, but would have actually
Right.
done really well here.
Yeah,
I would
stab
agree.
damage plus
Not
stab.
not to mention, I think the Gengar that Gengar is actually a very interesting point you make, because the next point I was going to say is I think this loss has really highlighted how his team does tend to suffer against the Trick Room, right?
Yeah, because he hasn't run against an actual Trick Room team yet. This was the first time he ever ran against a Trick Room team.
And this team,
Exactly.
He would
yeah,
be able to outsped every single one of his opponents weeks 1 to 4. But the instant week that he runs into Trick Room, he doesn't know what to do.
it's
Yeah.
maybe not be a case of not knowing what to do, but
Right, yeah.
it's some of the choices that he made in facing off against the team. Now, this team wasn't exactly fully trick room, not like some of the other teams that we've got in the league, like the Merseyside Marowaks,
Mhm.
the London Lucarios, and those type of teams. It wasn't
Mhm.
fully trick room offensive. Obviously, it could run the beat up and go fast. However, it was one of the first teams that really had a trick room mode that challenged the South Croydon Saws. The
Right.
Croydon Saws are always wanting to go fast, always wanting to outspeed. Yet this week, I feel like he should have been more aware of the fact that his opponent isn't going to be trying to match this. His opponent is going to be like, okay, I'm not going to outspeed this. I need to flip the table. I need to make it so he has to keep up with me. And
Mhm.
Trick Room is one of these modes that is perfect for these fast teams. If you just bring Trick
Right.
Room, like we've said in the past against the South Korean Swords, unless he's bringing his Imprison Gengar, which again is another thing I felt like he was missing. He could have brought this Imprison Gengar with Sludge Wave and just prevented that initial momentum that the Somerville Scraggies were looking for.
Right.
I don't think to say that that was a major issue. I think even if he had brought that Gengar, I don't know if that would have won him any games because of you're still up against a incredibly bulky Regirock and Gudra. Like you just got to
And
that point
Gengar
where
doesn't have Levitate this generation, so it can't
yeah,
take a
the
a
Max Quake.
max quake.
And you get to this point where I'm watching the South Korean Swords versus the Somerville Scraggies, and he just can't break through them. It's just this. It's not often in doubles or VGC where you get this wall you can't break through. Yet
Yeah.
here we were watching this, just beating their heads against the wall.
And I think
Sorry.
Yeah, I think another thing to point out is that unlike unlike the game that we saw with you, Brian, where the Dark Lords played a very consistent control game, I'm not
Yeah.
quite sure the South Cordon Soars have the ability to play as much of a control game, which is something that you want to do against these big, slow targets that you can just sort of like charm over and over and start just dropping their stats a little bit and waiting out the max.
Mhm.
they kind of have a pedal to the metal kind of team, right? You have all these really fast mons like and you got Darmanitan, Sceptile, Terrakion, Latios. Like all these mons want to be doing damage and doing damage fast. So if you're able to just sort of like be too bulky to deal with that, I'm curious to see how he'll try to adapt his team to deal with that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also thinking he might regret having traded away that Comfey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that was week 1, so quite a while ago.
And just an interesting thing I found was he had Indeedee and he had it choice scarfed. Now, I understand why. Like if he want to do some sort of trick shenanigans with it. But I feel like the sets were a little bit off for his opponent this week. He had Hyper Voice on the Indeedee, where I feel like Mystical Fire would have been just a better coverage move. It's just little key things like this that I noticed. Like Hyper Voice, what's it really doing there? Like I know he's not going to be the move he's going to be going for a lot of the time, but like he's going to be facing a Dracloak, a Cabalion, a Regirock, especially defensive Gudra. It just to me, there could have been a better move there, and because Indeedee Mail does have a decent move pool. I mean, for one, he could have brought Trick Room on it and not been choiced, not use a choice scarf, a choice item, locking himself into moves. And it just to allow him a little bit more control. It doesn't need to be outspeeding the Somerville Scraggies because of even if you're choice scarfed, you're gonna be choice scarf hitting what a Cabalion when it's maxed. Yeah, it does a bit of damage, but I don't think it was necessarily the right move. If you're going to choice anything in that situation, I'd say probably Specs is just the better choice item for this week. So I feel like a lot of this came down to a little bit of a not so much poor, but not a optimal or preparation from the South Croydon Swords end.
I think their plan revolved around the idea of just killing that Comfey and going from there, which is like obviously one of the better strategies against the Somerville Scraggies. I think like a Darmanitan Tornadus lead, it makes sense if your idea is, okay, we're just going to go ham and try to kill his support mons quickly, make sure that Gudra isn't doing a ton of damage to us. Because, obviously the Gudra has come most of the weeks for the Somerville Scraggies. But this Regirock Trick Room mode, with the sort of surprise redirection eject button in game 1 at least.
Yeah.
Wow. That like it completely shut down that strategy. And like I think that was just insanely good prep. But
definitely. Somerville Scraggies, definitely.
Kudos to both players, I'd say. Especially Somerville Scraggies, proving that they are so strong and kind of the one to beat at this point. I'm kind of disappointed that I'm not going to be fighting them during the regular season. I definitely wanted to have a chance at like seeing if I could go toe to toe with them. But I mean, I guess I'm also a little bit grateful.
Yes.
You can go toe to toe them at the playoffs, Masenko.
Hopefully.
So as I say, something that made me laugh though is that once that Togekiss eject buttoned out, he got that Regirock in straight away under Trick Room, and now the South Croydon Swords have got a Darmanitan and a Tornadus versus a Regirock in Trick Room. That is not an ideal situation to find yourself in turn 2.
That's a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. We'll be right back. Cut screen like the Regirock comes in.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like.
But yes, so the Somerville Scraggies, great tech, well prepped, and the South Croydon Swords, hopefully they identify this as a issue with the Trick Room teams and just plan for it a little bit more going forward. So they're both strong teams, and they could have easily gone anyway. Just seems to be the Somerville Scraggies was the team to come out on top this time.
Yeah, and they have a couple trades left, so if they're really desperate for some like answers or for some like control potential or like obviously anti-trick room stuff, they already have some anti-trick room with like Gengar,
Yeah.
with improvement and stuff like that. But if they're really, really interested, they do have 2 trades left, and there are some good mons still available, I think. So cool.
Okay, so we move on to the Merseyside Marowaks versus the Amateur Alchemies. And next up is the Amateur Alchemies versus the Merseyside Marowaks. And now this was another upset. We
Yep.
had the Amateur Alchemies, who had risen to the top of the leaderboard. They'd beaten me last week. They took quite well, actually, 2-0. They'd beaten everyone up to this point, only dropping 1 set so far.
Yeah.
And
this was even more of an upset than the Somerville versus Croydon Stores match. I think even last week that we predicted that a lot of us predicted that the Somerville Scraggies might come out on top. In this week, well, here's the funny thing. I was the one predicting that the Merseyside would win.
yes,
And everyone else was saying that, that the
Yeah.
Alchemies would win.
you said
I
it.
will. I tipped the scales a little bit because I did go and help prep with the Merseyside Marowaks pretty substantially. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think this was a very, very interesting match in terms of like its implications for the future of this,
Definitely.
the coming weeks.
Now, what's interesting is that I managed to speak to both coaches about the prep and the game plans after the matches, and it was interesting, man. Prior to this matchup, we had Merseyside Marowaks just make a trade for the Colossal. So he just traded, got that Colossal, and we spoke about this briefly at the end of last week's video. And in response to that, the Amateur Alchemies actually picked up Cottony as one of the tier 3s, and we did see an appearance of this Cottony. And as expected, the Cottony came with this intention to disrupt. It had taunt, it had charm, it had trick, or switcheroo, had switcheroo with lagging tail.
Yeah,
ready for the trick room mode / speed swap mode.
Yeah. So I think this is obviously the Cottony is very good. I am a little bit like curious about the use of that trade slot, because if you're going to just pick up a Cottony for this one game and then trade it away immediately after, like, that does seem strategically viable, I suppose, but it also makes it super obvious that the Cottony's coming.
Yeah.
And you can kind of prep around it. So yeah, there was that, which I'm a little bit like, that seems less than optimal. It feels like you could have made better use of that trade slot and just like you're in a good position in the league and you're ahead of your opponent in terms of the standings quite a bit, and you are, I would argue, at this point in time, a better player for the most part. So like, why waste that trade? Just like make a team from what you have and you can still win, right? And you saw that the Cottony didn't even perform that well, and mostly because they obviously Merseyside Marowaks knew it was coming and could bring that poison jab on the Barraskewda, the Pangoro, who's immune to trick or immune to pranksters.
Yeah.
You saw like mental herb or Bombi so that they could get up speed swap without the taunt going off, stuff like that. So like overall, even though it was like a bit impactful landing charms game 2, it just dies game 3 in the first turn, and kind of puts the Alchemies on the back foot immediately.
So let's just break down the games a little bit. So game 1, I believe the Merseyside Marowaks led Amoongus and Barraskewda versus the Alchemies, which led the Copperaja Alchemy. Now, the intention for the Alchemies, I believe, was to basically just start with a maxed Copperaja, get some boosts on it with like Steel Spike, Max Quakes, and then just start decorating into it. However, the Alchemy wasn't running with safety goggles. So against an Amoongus lead, especially Amoongus that was redirecting not only from a Trick Room setter, as what I assume the Alchemies were predicting the usage of Among Us 4, but for quite an offensive lead, and in Barraskewda. And I believe you've got a bit to say about the plan for that, Masenko.
Yeah. So, okay, this is going pretty in depth into the sort of like reasons I've been sort of undervaluing, I think, the Alchemies these last many weeks, and like questioning why they're not being challenged in these strategies that they're bringing too much. And this exact reason. So you have this Barraskewda who can both be aggressive, but also is able to disrupt and pivot. So it can do a lot of damage to the support mons, and you're kind of forcing the Alchemy's hand on turn 1, right? So if you can do that against the Alchemy's team, against anything other than Chandelure, I believe, who can just provide a lot of immediate aggression in the right situation, you have a situation where the Alchemies are forced to play suboptimally. And the reason for this is because, how do I explain this? They have a lot of their strategy revolves around very supportive, sort of like defensive setup strategies, right? You have a Lapras, who not the biggest powerhouse in terms of damage, setting up that Aurora Veil, and then you have something like Alchemy or what other supports do they have? Like Raichu, stuff like that. They kind of just like sit there and are very disruptive and annoying, and then eventually, you just can't kill this Lapras. And if you're trying to match the Lapras in terms of like being aggressive against it, you're not going to get anywhere. And especially once it like gets a weakness policy activated or like a decorate onto it, now it actually starts doing damage, and you've kind of like put yourself in a very, very poor position. But if you just kind of ignore the Lapras and kill everything around it for a while, it tends to not do much.
Yeah, it's a lot less threatening.
Exactly. And so the Barraskewda lead was very, very pivotal in several ways. So not only can it threaten the support mons very substantially, it can one-shot the Raichu with a choice-banded flip turn, we learned, or very close to a one-shot.
I know close combat one-shots.
Yeah, stuff like that. So we can one-shot that Raichu potentially, and it provides counter aggression against the potential aggressive Chandelure lead. Flip turn against a max Chandelure does like 80% of its health or something. Like, it was ridiculously threatening to that. And I'm in max. I mean, it can one-shot Chandelure out of max, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's providing that. It also gets Brick Break. So if you're against a Lapras, all you got to do is Brick Break through its screens. Obviously, you don't want to hit the Lapras with the Brick Break, because then you'll activate its weakness policy, as we saw in game two.
Yeah.
Commented it. But if you hit its partner, say a Kaparaja, you're going to do a ton of damage, and you're going to break those screens for the follow-up attack.
It was even doing a good chunk of damage to an Alchemy, which, like Brick Break, was doing a good chunk of damage to an Alchemy, which it resists fighting.
Yeah. So this choice-banded maxed attack Barraskewda was like very threatening, and you don't need to max it for it to be threatening. And since we know that the Lapras max isn't that threatening on its own either, and we've calced the Amoonguss to be able to take a max ice move from the Lapras. I always forget what its G-max move is
Resonance.
called. Yeah.
Resonance, yeah.
We calced it so that it would survive that. So we know we can do a lot of damage and pressure immediately with this Barraskewda. And that kind of forces the Lapras to max, because now you have to take down this Amoonguss, because this Barraskewda is just going to run circles around your team.
Yeah.
But that is the key moment, right? Once that Lapras maxes and those 3 turns are up, guess what we have in the back? Glastrier. And then we max that. We don't waste our max early. And when the Glastrier can max, and has the space to do so. And the Barraskewda's already chipped a lot of those mons, the support mons. That Glacier is just going to go in, get all the boosts, start snowballing, and just win the game for him. And we saw that happen in games 1 and 3. I think there was a lot of blunders in game 2 on the side of the Merseyside Marowaks.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's kind of how I've thought that people should be approaching the Alchemy matchup. And was getting frustrated that nobody was, and so I basically sat down with Ancient Jedi, coach of the Merseyside Marowaks, and he's somewhat, I don't suppose he's new to Pokemon, but like I think new to VGC to some degree, and still learning a lot. So I sat with him and like was giving him a lot of advice, and I was like, hey, I think you're really undervaluing the Glastrier and the Barraskewda here, and like how threatening they could be to the Alchemies team. And so I think he learned a lot, which was really sweet. I think everybody should always try to, be the best players that they can, and it's always nice to have someone help you out. And that's just how I, helped out with them, and yeah, he ended up doing well.
And what's interesting is that this Glacier wasn't even used within Trick Room, and even when the Ribombee was brought, there was no speed swap into it. And it just proves that even though Glacier is considered the Trick Room mon, it can be such a threat outside of Trick Room.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the Alchemies did bring a lot to disrupt the Glacier, which, thanks to a couple of blunders on the Merseyside's part in Game 2, got it into a position where it was basically -6 in attack.
Yeah.
Thanks to Priority Charm from Cottony and the Alchemy itself having Charm.
Yeah.
So, yes, so just to describe the blunder, I don't know if it was such a blunder, but he close combated the Lapras switched max when the Cottony just charms the Barraskewda -2, and from there it's just Cottony is free to just keep disrupting and disrupting and disrupting.
And now Barraskewda's locked into close combat, and the Lapras has got its weakness policy activated. And now it can actually one-shot a Moongus, even though we calced for Resonance to survive it. It does.
And the interesting thing is Game 3. So he led the Ribombee, and let's be honest, that Struggle Bug tech that the Ribombee had just completely walled what the Alchemies wanted to do. At one point, he switches the Chandelure in onto the Struggle Bug from Ribombee, and oof.
Yeah.
That Chandelure ends up being at like -3 before it's switched out later on in the game. The Lapras, which is maxed, is at -2, then -3. I mean, Lapras by itself is already pretty underwhelming on the offensive side. One of the reasons why you max a Lapras is not so much for the offensive pressure, but for the defensive benefits that you gain from it.
Exactly.
And this was just making it even worse, making it to a point where it was nerfed. And not just that, but you're also with the Brick Break that you're bringing on the Barraskewda, you're able to basically just waste that max. He's maxed, yeah. He's completely doing no damage. And Barraskewda just comes in, Brick Break, onto the screens. That's your Dynamax wasted.
Exactly. And another thing to mention, to Dragon's credit, they did bring a mixed Lapras, which is actually a really interesting and viable option for his team in particular. Usually you don't want to have mixed mons because you're ultimately sacrificing like the benefits of having a more like investment in one thing or the other. But since he has the Alchemy, who gives you +2/+2 to both special attack and attack, not to mention it was running weakness policy, which does the same thing, I think you can actually afford to run a mixed set. So even though the Struggle Bug was dropping the Lapras' special attack, it still had that Iron Head, which was able to be a threat throughout the game, regardless.
Yeah.
But yes, the Struggle Bug tech was Very exciting to me. I'm a huge fan of Rabombi, and I'm a huge fan when Rabombi does cool stuff. So seeing the Struggle Bug tech was really, really, really cool in my opinion.
It was nice to see the Marowaks do what I wanted to do in my match against the Alchemies, which is basically bring the Snarl, shut the offensive down. But obviously, Snarl versus a weakness policy Chandelure is not going to end -2. It's going to be +1.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So the match was really exciting, to be honest, and it's an upset. Let's be real. The Merseyside Marowaks were quite low down on the ranking list. Around, I think, standings they were in the bottom to 8 or so. They were in like I think they were placed around 11th or 12th going into this match,
Yeah.
matching up against the top player of the league at the time. And now the Merseyside Marowaks have faced the top player a few times now, or the top player of that week. And it was nice for him to nice to see that they get a win. So
Agreed.
So we move on from the Marowaks and the Alchemies to your game, Masenko, the Crummock Colossals versus the Drowsy Dracozolts. And it was a 2-1 win. At the time of watching it, I would say it was nerve-wracking from my side from watching it. Do you want to share some of your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think this match was very deceptive for the viewer in a lot of ways. I
believe
think
so.
It might have looked like a bit of a shit show.
Wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, to more or less. But I think this has definitely been my most favorite match of the season, I think. Because there was a lot going on there. So despite the fact that I think that the Crummock Colossals, before the trades they made this week, had a not so great team, the one thing that they do have to their advantage is this element of surprise. You can prep for these 3 modes, but they also have all sorts of weird janky stuff that they can do to you. And so like they did that, right? They brought like a choice banded Frostlass against me, which kind of makes sense into like the fact that I have so many weaknesses to ice, especially on my carries like Zapdos and Venusaur and Flygon. But they also I think prepped really, really well because they're bringing like a Mudsdale Morlul against what is a Venusaur team in a lot of cases, right? And you'd be like, why are they bringing that? Well, I was like, this week, I was like, I think based on their modes, I should bring Trick Room, which I did. And the fact that they brought those made this game, I think, very, very interesting because I think they probably just anticipated that I might bring Trick Room, and then they just brought the Mudsdale and maxed it, and it was like, yeah, it was like so weird. But I don't know. I can go into more specifics, but I want to let you guys speak your thoughts as well.
So when I was watching game 1, I remember you led Kangaskhan and was it Klefki?
Kangaskhan Klefki, yeah.
Yeah, and I really liked the tech that you were bringing. So you had the Klefki, which had the Misty Terrain as one of its moves to get that Prankster, and I thought that was played perfectly that turn 1 when the Indeedee went to use the Expanding Force and you used the Misty Terrain, basically meaning that you could use priority moves now because you have Sucker Punch on the Kangaskhan if you ever wanted to. It also means that you can't be burned or anything from the Frostlass because you could easily the Frostlass, if it wasn't choice banded, that turn 1 could have easily just gone Will-O-Wisp into your Kangaskhan.
Exactly.
Which I thought was a great play by you, considering we don't know the opponent's sets. It just put that momentum in your favor for the start of that match. Then you ended up getting Gallade in at some point. I was expecting you to start coaching at that point into the Kangaskhan, getting it defensively boosted, get it offensively boosted so that you can just start doing damage, and then just coming out of max, start drain punching with the Scrappy onto the Frostlass and everything else, and just regain health, making this Assault Vest Kangaskhan unkillable, basically.
Mhm.
And because do you have Earthquake on it?
I did have Earthquake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you had max Quake boosts, you had coaching offensive and defensive boosts, and then you click Trick Room, which I isn't a play that I personally thought was the best move. But again, as I say, it's quite deceptive. Um, watching it compared to what you're thinking at the time of playing. And
Yeah.
sorry,
So
go for it.
the reason there that I do click Trick Room is I see this Frostlass and it's spamming triple axle against me and doing quite a bit of damage. I didn't know that it was choice banded at that point anyway. I might have, it was just spamming it, so maybe I could have guessed that. But I also was considering the possibility that it was a physical set so that the Frost Breath wouldn't do as much damage to a Tauros,
Mm-hmm.
who I suspected he would have in the back. He did have a Tauros, but he also had a Mudsteel.
Yeah.
So when I set the Trick Room there, I know I'm killing the Indeedee, and I'm expecting a Tauros to come in, so that now the Kangaskhan and the Gallade can underspeed both of them. And I also calced it so that Gallade would underspeed the Kanga in Trick Room, or sorry, that the Gallade would underspeed the Kanga in Trick Room so that it could coaching before the Kanga gets its moves off.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that was the idea. Then he brings out Mudsdale, and I kind of have to shift gears there.
Yeah,
But I did bring Venusaur in the back just in case.
100%.
So I felt pretty confident in that match.
And that was the match that you learned it was Assault Vest by knockoffing into the into it, which I thought was a good move. Yeah, you boost its defense, but honestly, it was good information to find out. I do think that part of me is like, instead of going for the Trick Room, you could have just done the coaching, max strike into the Indeedee, lower the speed of the Frostlass, and now it can't use the Frost Breath into the Taurus turn one, meaning that you could probably KO it or something before it could. So like, I felt like that was an alternate way you could have dealt with the the Taurus in the back if that was the case. And that meant that you were also covering for the fact that if Mudsdale was in the back, you weren't setting Trick Room ready for it.
Yeah.
But
I actually clicked Max Strike, or I was like considering clicking Max Strike that time. Then I went and I was like, you know what? I should probably set Trick Room here, and I went and changed the move to a Max Knuckle so I could get that boost. If I'd gone for that Max Strike and instead just started coaching, then yeah, it probably would have been a much cleaner win for me.
But I do think you, despite that position, you ended up finding yourself in, you still played to your outs pretty well. So that was nice. I think we've got to move on now to game 2 of that. Like, we've got to just
I think it was really interesting that something that the Colossals brought in that match was Tail Whip on Tauros. And I think, if I remember correctly, that was, I mean, along with the Morlul that could again, that came back. I think that was something that threw off too. I think it was low on your defense and then did a lot of damage outside of the Morlul from the second game.
Yeah, I thought the Tail Whip was
a
a nice piece.
That's usually the first move you get rid of when you can in a normal playthrough. You just get rid of Tail Whip. And then he just brings it, and then it's like, what the? I think that was an interesting tech piece on the Kermit Colossal side, and that just plays into the fact that they're such an unpredictable team.
Yeah, the tail whip was nice. It was just a more supportive Taurus this week, I think, for him. I think the idea was to basically trick you into the fact that he was going to be bringing that Frostlass Taurus mode. As we later find out, it was actually sheer force. We were talking about this earlier on. The Tauros hit the clef key, and you were expecting it to switch out due to it carrying a jet button, and it didn't. And we're like, well, how come that didn't work? And then I was like, oh, I know what it is. Like, talking about it after the game. It must have been running sheer force, because sheer force has got this weird interaction wherefore it considers the eject button as part of the sheer force condition as a secondary effect. So it kind of treats when the eject button activates, it's activating in the same clause as which Circle Throw or Dragon Tail would.
Yeah, and that was kind of a bit of a saving grace for him, I think, bringing that sheer force, because if I'd been able to switch out the clef key before the Max Mindstorm hit it, I would be in a position next turn to have Kinga there and have Klefki able to actually set Misty Terrain again at some point in the future, once the max is down. But since I can't at that point now switch into the Kangaskhan, like, by force, or like I have a manual switch, like it basically makes it a rough situation for me, right? I'd also like to mention, and I mentioned this in the video that I posted, I was really not expecting the max NDD there, though I suppose I should have, based on just the fact that everything else didn't seem like I should have been questioning to myself, like, okay, what is he going to max this game? Because everything else kind of wasn't really there. I'd already seen the Morlul. Okay, he's not going to max that. He had Frostlass, who I knew had Choice Band. He's not going to max that. The one I was expecting was Tauros, but now he's at like half health from a Kanga. So he's probably not maxing that either. So the Ndidi max made a lot more sense. And so when I get that Venusaur in, I think it's a good switch in first and foremost, because it blocks the Spore from the Morlul.
Yeah, which it did.
But then it also gets its weakness policy procced by the Expanding Force. And yes, it takes a lot of damage, but I still have Trick Room up, and I can return that damage to the generally faster Mons than me. And so I really should have just went into the Ndidi that second turn. I forgot I had one more turn of Trick Room. So I just protect there, and they max, and they do a ton of damage through protect, leaving me with 1 HP and a very tricky situation whether or not I want to preserve this 1 HP Venusaur or not. And yeah, it was just so many tricky decisions I found myself in, where I just couldn't quite get to the point where I was able to set up Misty Terrain to block those spores, which would have been super crucial for me to win that game. I wasn't really in a position to taunt the Morlul, because they very intelligently follow me that turn after the Ndidi max was over, instead of going for an attack. And so obviously Kanga is such a tank; it's able to break through all this stuff, and it becomes a 1v1 be the Morlul, but now it can't actually kill it. So
because of the strength sap being put to sleep. You don't want to be facing a Morlul with a physical Mon 1v1.
Yeah.
It was a shame, and that was another game where you didn't know Morlul was in the back. You set the Trick Room again, like you did game 1, and then Morlul switches in, and you're like, oh god.
Yeah, and then they just spore my max Kanga right after, and it's like, and I don't have protect on it because I'm assault vested, and it's like, God, that's so rough. And what's really funny is I was very much debating whether or not to bring safety goggles or focus sash on the Gallade, and I ended up bringing focus sash, which did save me at one point. But the safety goggles might have been better in that game.
You might not have lost that game. You might not have lost that game 2, where the focus sash was only implied in game 3.
Yeah.
Oh, and then so we move on to just talk about the game 3, which I honestly felt was your better played game. I thought you identified your win con a lot sooner in that game, and you were on control for a lot longer. So this time you led the Ninetales Venusaur, the Sun mode, versus what Dr. H brought, which was the Mudsdale, and what was it led with? Oh, Indeedy. So you would think at first it's kind of a difficult situation to be in, because of he's just going to follow me redirect. He's going to easily just straight up max Quake into your Ninetales. You go for changing the terrain, I believe. I think that was what your goal was just changing the terrain.
Yeah.
And
thing, I kind of messed up with the Ninetales move that I picked. I should have probably picked Flamethrower to get the kill on Ndidi. But regardless of that, to anybody who, as soon as I see that Mudsdale in the lead against the Ninetales, which I think is a very intelligent lead against my Venusaur Ninetales, I think, especially with the Indeedee threatening the Venusaur for the Mudsdale. I think he predicted that I would lead that, which is very, very smart of him. I was like, okay, I just got to stack this Ninetales at this point. I cannot have a Klefki switch in. I cannot have a Kanga switch in. But the max overgrowth there was very. I think I'm very proud of that move because not only does it reset the terrain so that Indeedee can't, doesn't have the psychic terrain anymore, but it also reduces the damage from ground type attacks. So, all in all,
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it only reduces Earthquake and Bulldoze. I don't know. Yeah, Magnitude, not Bulldoze. Earthquake and Magnitude. I don't think it actually does all ground types.
Yeah,
it's just those two.
Goes to show a hole in my game knowledge, but either way, it was it was there to give me a little bit more sustain.
No, I still think it was a good move.
Yeah.
I actually think the following turn moves was what won you the game. And you're very good at this, where you don't always go for like the damage with the mons. You go for the boosts that these moves give you. And you saw that this Assault Vest Mudsdale was going to be using Max Quakes nearly every turn. Yep. Like it was pretty obvious that's what it was going to end up doing. So yes, he brought in Klefki, and then Mudsdale goes into the Klefki, which is expected. You do whatever you do with Klefki things, but you were max oozing, and just to keep up with that, plus that special defense boosting, boost on the Mudsdale, and this allowed you to get to a point where you were recycling Kangaskhan for fake out pressure. Against the Mudsdale, which I thought was great, a great thing again. I was thinking, yes, recycle this fake out user here against that Mudsdale. Let it get the stamina boost. Who cares? Your end game here is this Venusaur versus that Mudsdale.
And that's also exactly why I brought the Giga Drain. I was really debating what to bring on Venusaur in terms of a grass move this game, and that Mudsdale kind of stuck out to me, and I was like, I can very much imagine myself in a situation where I'm against an assault vested Mudsdale, and this Venusaur isn't doing much to it, especially if I'm like, bringing Frenzy Plant, which is going to stun me for a turn, or whatever the other one that I brought the other
Energy
couple
Ball
weeks.
or Leaf Storm.
Yeah, like it's just not going to be doing much. I really need that sustain against it. So Giga Drain was the correct pick there, and I'm very grateful that I brought it.
I just looked up grassy terrain. It reduces the power of Bulldoze, Earthquake, and Magnitude.
Yeah, the spread ground moves. I do think that Dave shouldn't have gone for the Morlul game 3.
Yeah.
I think that, yes, it won in the game for game 2, but I think that he should have brought one of his other mons just in preparation. Like, I think even Weavile could have been decent against that Venusaur. Like, if it was going for the triple axle or something, or the Frostlass triple axle, then it could have. It was another mon against that Venusaur, which you were quite inclined to lead. But
to be fair, the Weavile is a very bad matchup into my Kangaskhan.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
That does somewhat deter him from bringing it, I would say. But all in all, I think, I guess Morlul is certainly a mon that's very good. I don't think that the reason the Morlul won game 2 was just because Morlul is that powerful.
No.
I think because he played really, really well.
He did.
Saw his outs and was able to sort of circumnavigate the various things that I could do to Morlul, such as taunt, such as the sludge bomb, etc.
Yeah.
But game 3, because of those special attack boosts I was getting, I was able to one-shot the Tauros with a simple fake out plus max ooze as it came. And when you get to the point where the Venusaur is just one-shotting everything, and you just don't have that time to set up, and I haven't given you Trick Room, Yeah, more
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was nice. I thought it was a lot more of a typical game for you where you're more in control.
Yeah, I think I played game 3 the best out of the 3 games, but I also think that like that was just because I had the full information now, right?
Yeah.
I was able to see what his play style was, what he was bringing, like what his sets were, and now I knew like, okay, I have a game plan. I'm gonna lead this. I'm gonna lead this Ninetales Venusaur. I can outspeed everything he brings here. I can outspeed the Colossal Weavile if I have to.
Not tempted to click Trick Room.
Yeah, stuff like that. And like the Kangaskhan Klefki obviously are pivotal in this matchup as well. So you keep those in the back and have some good switches. Have the Kangaskhan cycle fake out, drain punch stuff. Makes it for a game where I can just control the tempo.
Yeah. And what was nice is from watching, I've been on the receiving end of an Indeedee sweep by the Grumma Colossals. Um, luckily, they didn't bring what they did against me, which is weakness policy with Fling into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a fun matchup for me a few weeks back. But it was nice to see the Chroma Colossals are starting to get back into their usual play style. It's not orthodox. It's unorthodox, should I say? Where he is unpredictable and he's bringing these more creative sets, but still effective to the matchups.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's nice to see that he's starting to get back into the swing of this. I think this is one of his stronger outings, despite it still being a loss. I think it was nice to see, and I think he's going to just get better and better now towards the latter half of the season.
I completely agree, especially with
Yeah.
those trades he's making. Like,
Yeah.
very good trade.
Okay, so I think it's enough about your nice win here, Masenko. I think we move on to the Dark Lord Greninjas versus the Charlotte Beedrills, Brian.
Yes, let's do that.
I don't personally have a great deal to say on this one. I think Masenko helped a little bit with the Dark Lords, and I know, obviously, well, you played Brian, so I think you two are probably the best ones to talk about this one.
Yeah.
I can give my initial thoughts, which was Fake Out was everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
Pile of Swine
So
was a beast. Don't ever underestimate a special Pile of Swine when you have a mon that's 4 times weak to freeze dry. And
yeah.
do not get fooled by Thunderwave freeze dry 2 times in a game.
Yeah.
Let you take it away.
So first game, when I was playing it, I thought he was actually gonna take that game 1. But I think then I sort of realized that I got this. I actually turned up being a Toxtricity sweep completely. I got Toxtricity, got all 4 of the kills that matchup. He got lucky where I used a stun shock on, I think it was a Incineroar, and it chose poison on the Max Cartana. So nothing happened there. I got a little lucky there, and then game two and 3, Grimmsnarl was just a monster. I KO'd it earlier in game 1 with a couple of max oozes, so I didn't see its full moveset, but by game 2, I had seen its full moveset, and then in game 3, I just couldn't KO it in time, and it was basically one of the leading downfalls of my team. So I brought a very special-oriented team this week, with the exception of Dracovish, which, again, I fell for the same trick twice, which is why I named the video what I did. Fool me once, shame on me. Shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then looking back in the video, I thought definitely, I think I played better than what I thought I did after hearing what you all had to say during the replay of the video. We watched it all together. A lot of the UGA guys in our division and Carmen looked together, and we just saw that I played better than I thought I did.
Yeah,
I think it was just the immediate after the match where I just thought I just did not like the way that I played. I went in pretty confident because in my practice I think I did like 20 practice matches with Oddball, and Crizzle combined, and I took almost all of them. But the one mon that really caused me to take those matches wasn't even brought, the Pelipper. So I saw 2 mons I didn't prep for. They were used, and even the mons that I did prep for, they were used differently. So it's just one of those things that you just need to try to prep for everything that you can, and I guess just remember what the main threats are from game to game if you lose. So I think I had forgotten how much of a threat the Piloswine actually was because of how much the Grimmsnarl was being such a threat.
Yeah, I think those are all very good takeaways for your side of things. And I think the biggest thing I think to point out here, obviously, Carmine can be tilted by the fact that we had triple fake out on that team, but regardless, I think it was somewhat effective in for several reasons, right?
It forced me to bring protect on literally almost everything except for my my Toxtricity, because everything on my team had protect except for Toxtricity, who was running a choice scarf.
Yeah,
that was always the mon that got faked out.
Yeah, but if I had maxed that turn, if I had maxed it, I wouldn't have gotten fake. It wouldn't have gotten flinch from the fake out. But
yeah. Well, I mean, but then obviously that turn you have a Vikavolt next to it, so either you're switching out the Vikavolt there or maxing it, right? I don't think you ever stay in with a Vikavolt against an Incineroar or Grimmsnarl lead unless you're maxing it. So I think that was the correct move on Dark Lord's play.
Oh yeah.
To fake out Parting Shot this Vikavolt, or fake out the Toxtricity Parting Shot the Vikavolt, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So I think in general, his plan, which I helped with, to essentially drop stats, right, was very, very, very good here. We see this sand mode that we know is like, okay, they have the Gigalith and the the Excadrill and stuff like that, but these mons don't really stand up to Kartana very well, given that Kartana has a very high defense stat and is resisting most, if not all, of the stuff that they're going to throw at it. So we bring Kartana obviously to deal with that, and then we're like, okay, so what if he brings like other things, right? The Stoutland in particular seemed very threatening. The Dracovish could be threatening potentially, depending on the build and like how he's positioning around it. And finally, the what else did you bring? You brought like Credilli, which is going to shut down some stuff and is kind of bulky and hard to break through. And we kind of came to this conclusion that like Ludicolo is actually very good in this matchup, even without rain, just because it has such good resistances to most of what you're bringing, and is able to actually do some decent damage with its coverage. So that's number one. The other thing is we realized was you have these 2 electric types on your team in the form of Vikavolt and Toxtricity, who could also potentially pose a big threat. And so we're like, Piloswine seems really good here because of this, or Jolteon. We were definitely considering Jolteon over Piloswine for a while, but then we saw that Piloswine has Freeze Dry, and we came up with the tech of Thunderwave Freeze Dry into Dracovish for the KO. So yeah, that's kind of the prep that went behind it. I don't think that I think he played that strategy really well. I don't think you were expecting that strategy, and I don't necessarily think that strategy is like unlike what I think with like something with like Dragon's team, where certain strategies do seem fairly obvious to me. I think your team has a lot of flexibility to it. So I don't think this is like a strategy that like shuts down your team per se. But regardless, I think that it was a good bring.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely. I mean, didn't get to do anything with Dracovish, so it was a good bring. I'm not mad about that. Definitely not. Good bring's a good bring.
For sure. What was I going to say? I do think that some suggestions I would have made is possibly you saw how efficiently he'd shut down the Dracovish game 2, so maybe not have brought it game 3.
Yeah, I literally had forgotten about. That's the thing. I literally forgotten about the Pilot Swine because I think in game 2 he switches it out. He switches it out pretty early, and the Grimmsnarl stays in. So my mind is focusing on this Grimmsnarl over here. That's just spirit breaking and fake outing and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of narrow my sights on that Grimmsnarl. I don't know if that was that's what I contribute to me forgetting about the Pile Swine because I start focusing on this Grimmsnarl. I don't think it was obviously a part of the Dark Lord's plan, but it happened.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was, as you say, it was actually still a better game than you initially thought. The Dark Lords played really well.
Max guarded. In game 3.
That was it. Yeah.
I think if I had just I didn't know that I would still do a crazy amount of damage with a max lightning from -1 still.
Yeah, I remember.
I thought I was just like completely neutered. I thought I was completely neutered. But I feel because it turns out like after because I had poisoned the Grimmsnarl with a sludge bomb prior to that. And it turns out even at -1, with the damage from the previous sludge bomb, the poison, and a max lightning, it would have KO'd the Grimmsnarl, which would allow me to KO both the Piloswine and probably the Incineroar coming back in with a Fishious Rend.
Yeah. I felt like after that max guard, you were always just playing a turn behind, playing catch up to the game that was being played. You kind of lost your offensive momentum using a max guard when there was no real need to use it. And yeah, like you end up getting to a position then that you're always that one turn behind. You end up having the Dracovish in front of both the Mons again, where it could have come in after you'd KO'd one of them. And yeah, so it was unfortunate. But these things happen. Mistakes are made. Yeah. It wasn't a completely, oh my god, what the hell have you done here type of play. It was it's just a misplay. So
yeah,
it's not the end of the world.
He definitely had game 2 completely in hand. I don't feel like there's much I could do with game 2, but I think even maxing the Vikavolt and getting that parting shot into it, I still think I was in it. If I had just max lightning into that, I would have been in a good position still.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else to say?
I mean, well played from both sides. This is another, I think, like, could be considered a bit of an upset as well. Even though I think Dark Lord was already doing pretty well in the league. So
yeah, I think Dark Lord's doing deceptively well.
Yeah. I'd agree.
A bit of a dark horse, one may suggest. A Dark Lord.
Dark horses, Greninjas. The Dark horses, Greninjas.
So
I'll talk to him about changing the team name.
So we move on to I put it on wrong here. I've just realised I've put the match result wrong here. I can change that quickly. So we move on to the Welsh Wailords, myself, versus Bioptic and the Southeast Luxrays. And this was another rematch from last season. I played Bioptic last season, as I had played the Alchemies and yourself, Masenko. And I was really not wanting a three-peat of beating you guys last season and then losing to you guys this season. So far, I've lost to everyone I played last season. This season, I don't know. I think it was definitely a close match. It was intense. Like,
yeah,
I do think I got lucky, not so much from the game, but from the player. I think I got away with a little bit of murder there. Number one, can we just appreciate Drampa living on 2 HP?
Dude, the chat went wild after that.
The Drampa living on 2 HP, and because we can get into the actual game if you really want to in a second, but just my initial thoughts, like end of game one, I'm thinking, great, my win con here is Drampa, it's Meowstic on the field. I live this Sucker Punch every day of the week. Yeah, Sucker Punch is me. Then I get Return Fire. I'm thinking, okay, it's got my weakness policy on from my Metagross. I'm not snarling it. I'm not giving it that boost. Don't need to go for the super effective damage. Go for the Thunderbolt on the electric terrain. That'll do the most damage. Get it really low, but just not low enough. And then I go, oh, Life Orb Recoil, Life Orb Recoil. Where I'm basically within slightly, I think I was just out of range of a KO from Sucker Punch. So I think that was a guaranteed live, but I don't want to bet on it, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
I get the KO on the Meowstic.
He ended up throwing that game with a taunt into it instead of just attacking it with literally anything.
Well, we'll get into that in a second. But the fact that Drampa got the KO on the Meowstic and then died to its own Life Orb Recoil, making the game no mons remaining on either side of the field.
Yeah.
That's just how close the game was.
Because
nice
the Optics Mon fell before yours, you were given the win.
Yes, well, it's based on the fact that if all mons take damage equally in the same turn from something, then the slowest mon wins. But because it was my mon that KO'd his, and then mine fell to recoil, I always get the win there because that damage calculation happened after the initial one.
Yep.
So that was game one, and game two. Can we just appreciate Moltres? Thank you, Moltres, for clutching out a win at the end.
Yep, against the Hacksters who forgot how to use Rock Slide.
Bioptic said after the match that he brought the wrong Haxorus. He had planned to bring Rock Slide, and I was scouting for it at one point, thinking, has he got Rock Slide here? He's got Rock Slide. This is a GG to him, man. And luckily,
it turned out to be Crunch.
Yeah, luckily he picked up the wrong Rock Slide, and this again is a reminder to everyone: when you check your teams.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No offense to Bioptic here, but I really gotta raise an eyebrow at the prep for this match. I think part of the reason he said he taunted into the Drampa on that turn was because, quote, he didn't know what it did.
He was concerned of Trick Room shenanigans, he said.
Yeah.
And the issue is, Drampa doesn't learn Trick Room. He was a little bit more worried that it was a supportive Drampa, but I just maxed it and gone offensive with 3 moves that he's already seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think maybe he just wasn't in his right headspace coming into this match or something. But I don't know. This felt like Bioptic was kind of a hot mess this entire game. And I just kind of think he had a good strategy coming in with the Sucker Punch weakness policy Drifblim. We had prepped before and saw that was actually fairly effective against the Spectrum lead and doing a lot of damage to it. But then yes, you didn't do these the switch into the Drampa a couple times into Max Phantasm.
I wanted to, but Bioptic is such an unpredictable player. I just can't reliably predict what he's going to do. Yes, in our practices, it worked effectively because I know you as a player. I know which mon you're going to target at that time. Where for Bioptic, I just don't know, man.
Yeah.
And also I remember in game 1 he did max the Drifblim, but he didn't immediately Sucker Punch.
Which makes sense to me. Game 1, I know Masenko, you wanted to say something, I'll just get to that in a second. Game 1, turn 1, I was always double protecting just to figure out what he was going to do. I didn't want him to lead this, which I knew was. I didn't know it was weakness policy, but I had strong suspicions that it was, because you don't lead Meowstic Drift Blim unless you're Sucker Punch weakness policy. At least from my perspective, that was what was happening here. And I'm glad I did max guard and not just go for the max guard, just double protect, because I could use that turn to scout. If he didn't go for the max Sucker Punch weakness policy, whatever, he just Will-O-Wisps the Metagross turn 1. Well, that's great, isn't it?
Right.
So I'm just using them turns to scout out what he's actually planning to do. Because he has so much flexibility in the set he could be running with these two mons, it's key to find out. And what he did was max the Drift Blim to just attack the Metagross, which is fine. But he was also doing the trick to remove my weakness policy before I could bulldoze with Spectria and max Rockfall or max Hailstorm the Drift Blim.
Yeah, and God, that's just another thing like I want to point out about his prep is that the Meowstic with the trick and full set of priority moves like brought Mental Herb.
Yeah.
Instead of like Lagging Tail or Iron Ball or like anything disruptive to the person it's tricking.
Yeah.
That it can completely ignore from the fact that it has priority on all of its moves, including the Sucker Punch. So not quite sure why that came. Like, again, I mean, I guess, Spectrier can taunt Meowstic, and that would block the mental, that would block the taunt. But like, if you're leading a Sucker Punch lead into Drift Blim anyway, like, why are you worried about that? Like, you just sucker punch the Drift Blim and just one shot the Spectrier. And then if the Spectrier has Focus Sash, you just sucker punch the Spectrier next turn to kill it. If it's staying in or attacking.
It definitely has to play around.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. It felt very, very sloppy to me.
The Mental Herb to me was a bit of a weird one, because yes, we see on ladder I think back in Series 6 or Series 7, we saw a lot of Grimmsnarl sets running Light Clay with Trick. But at least that Light Clay
full incense.
There were Grimmsnarls with full incense, but I'm saying like some Grimmsnarls still ran the more standard Light Clay for the screens, but also could Trick just to remove some items and stuff, which it does work in some scenarios. I just feel like here there was no real immediate taunt pressure from my side, because obviously Meowstic moves first. I can't taunt the Meowstic before it does whatever it wants to do. And if I am taunting, well, the mon I'm using is usually going to be like Spectria, maybe Mienshao could have been taunt, but then that dies anyway. So like the only mon he had to really worry about was a taunt from my Spectria, and you see, given the opportunity, I just go for the Shadow Ball into it. Just try and KO it. So if he brought a more disruptive item on it, say like, as you say, Iron Ball, Lagging Tail, even a jet button to some degree, it would have been a little bit more favorable for him.
An eject button makes so much more sense, right? Because if it's a Spectrier lead and you're bulldozing your own Metagross, like, that's the reason I brought eject button Klefki this week against the Kremik Colossals, because two of his main combos rely on self-damaging abilities. So if I trick the eject button onto his main mon, who we're assuming is maxing, and he uses his self-damaging move, he immediately switches out his own guy with that eject button play. So yeah, that works for Metagross, right? And you assumed it was trick. You didn't even realize it was Mental Herb until after game 1. Like you were so focused on the fact that like it had this eject button potentially that I think like you just assumed it was eject button, and that's like honestly the correct assumption to make, right? Like
I remember I'd seen it was Mental Herb like turn 2, because he went for the trick again in turn 2 or something, and I just presumed it was trick eject button. Like turn 1 he tricked and I protected, so I didn't know what it was, and I just thought, great, he's gonna I need to just preserve my mons here and do what I can to just waste out his Dynamax and get into a good position.
Yeah.
There's no point maxing in front of this. And then I do find out it is Mental Herb, but it didn't register in my head that it's Mental Herb.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even if, even if you're like scared that, maybe you bring like Pikachu for some reason, and, like fake out the Meow Stick and the eject button doesn't go off, for instance. Like if you're worried about that so much, just bring Lagging Tail and put that onto the Spectrier, right? Like don't hit the Metagross with it, hit the Spectrier with it. Now you can outspeed the Spectrier and do some really annoying stuff to it. And it doesn't get that bulldoze off before. Well, it depends on how the interaction works. Maybe you do get that bulldoze.
Lagging Tail doesn't, but Iron Ball.
Yeah, Iron Ball might.
Probably, depending on my speed investment and his speed investment. Like if I was 170 something with Spectria this week, and he was just base 100, then Iron Ball would have put me below his Drift
Yeah.
Wing.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. Like if he, what I didn't think of at the time, if he had just tricked into my Spectria, then he could have removed my Focus Sash and just one-shot my Spectria.
Yep, exactly.
I ran the risk that he wasn't going to do that because if he couldn't outspeed me like game 2, I just straight shadow ball, I think, into the Meow Stick just to remove that stupid mon.
So I just think personally, I just don't think he. I don't know. I just don't think he thought through. He brought such a good lead against this Spectrier Metagross, and he just didn't have like. He not only didn't execute on it, but he also kind of didn't have some of the tools that he'd want in that case, like a trick situation. And he had Imprisoned Trick Room as his other two moves.
No, he had Trick Room and Sunny Day for my Hail mode. He didn't bring Imprison. He was always this is the thing that surprised me. He, knowing that he was in the season with us last season, my team was pretty well known for being pretty good with the Trick Room, like an alternate Trick Room. It wasn't like a pure hardcore Trick Room like we're seeing from one of the Lucarios or Carmine last season or the Marowaks. It was just a nice little 2 to 3 mon core, decent setup, decent execution of Trick Room. And I'm basically running the exact same Trick Room mode this season, and yet he didn't fully know what it does. He didn't have a full plan against it other than just going, if I lead Aromatisse, he just risks clicking Trick Room to counter the Trick Room.
Yeah, and what if you don't click Trick Room?
He just sets Trick Room for me.
Yeah, so it's not the best. And you know, if you're worried about a Trick Room lead, you have other options than that, right? You have so many other options. I don't know. I'm just like, I know I'm kind of laying into Bioptic here, and I don't mean to be, but I just think that this was like.
I personally think he just focused too hard on the Metagross Spectria lead and not gave enough thought into everything else.
Yeah. I don't even then though, like I said, like why does he trick turn 1? If he's doing the sucker punch weakness policy, who cares? Just kill something with that, kill the Spectrier. If you really want to kill the Spectrier with a trick, then prep for that and do that, Iron Ball the Spectrier so that now your Driftbloom outspeeds it and you can just kill it with a max Phantasm, even at no investment.
I'm hoping this is just a little blip on Bioptic's radar. Like he just had like a bad week or whatever, and then the rest of the weeks he's back to his normal, very well prepared self. I'd say. I hope this is just like one of those blips that we get every once in a while. We just overlook something.
It was interesting. It was interesting playing him this time because I've been helping him a little bit on the side here and there during his other weeks. So like I've helped touch up some of the sets and stuff and question some of his choices. So maybe he just didn't have that little nudge in the right direction, like fully. I know
Zamcio.
I know Zamcio's been doing really well with his prep and really helping him. But this is why I have so many people help me with my sets. Like there's always an opinion elsewhere,
Yeah, I agree, and yeah, I hope he does. I hope he does pick things back up. And the sad thing is that he basically almost won those 2 games regardless of this.
Very close.
But like, sorry, go.
Well, you had the second game more in hand matrix, and the first game he just completely blew the taunts into the
Yeah, I still think that I didn't really play a bad game. He was just always a little bit. If you're running the weakness policy Driftblim, it's like when the weakness policy Chandelure was run against me. It was always going to match up really well, and it was always going to be something that was really difficult for me to stop. I still think that the better matchup against me, or the harder matchup for me, was the standard grassy seed and Rillaboom lead. Like you know how wound up I got before the match. Going, I just don't know how I'm going to play this team. I've got the team I want to bring, but I just don't know how I'm going to play it. And it was only like playing a few matches on the day before. I think it was actually one of the first times this season that I've actually played so many mock matches, and I think it's because I've lost the last 2 weeks due to like things out of my control. I just wanted to feel a bit more in control going into this match.
Yeah. So I'm going to criticize your play for a second because we have been criticizing Luxrays.
I will say before you start doing that though, going into this game, I was not planning on maxing Drampa. It just felt right in the moment.
Yeah. So okay, a few things.
Here we go.
I think first and foremost, I think so I've already said this a couple times. Lack of Drampa switch-ins, even though you don't know who he's going to target where, I still think preserving the Metagross would have been just the safer play almost always. Because even if he does go into that Metagross slot, the Drampa is going to pretty much survive whatever it is, and especially if it's a Max Phantasm, there you go. You've got that taken care of. Like it doesn't do anything to you.
What's annoying is that there was 2 opportunities for me to have done that. Okay, turn 1, game 1, I think double protecting is the right move, but then turn 2, I kind of know he's going for my Spectre, and I could have easily have done that.
Yeah.
And then the same thing, turn 1 of game 2, I just had this feeling that he was going to target my Metagross here and remove the Metagross as soon as he could and leave the Spectre, which is why I went for the attack with Spectre instead of double protecting. And I was actually contemplating, should I switch into the Drampa here? Should I call it? I do have this game in hand. I could predict this and put me into a really good position off the bat.
Yeah.
And I do regret that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that was I mean, that's just sort of not even the bigger thing I want to talk about. The biggest thing I think once you see that lead, realizing that the weakness policy Driftblim just threatens the Metagross Spectre lead, I think you 100% should have changed it up. Like you saw Mental Herb and not Safety Goggles on the Meowstic, so you can potentially go Fungus pretty effectively. It's going to redirect Sucker Punch, which is not going to do anything, so it's not even going to break your sash. And the Max Phantasm certainly won't kill you because you have your sash still.
Well, I was AB Lights on Fungus.
Oh, were you? You might have still been able to survive depending on the spreads, but
I mean, I would have survived it was a Max Mindstorm. Now, yeah, I do agree with you because if he'd Max Mindstorm, he would have put his Meowstic in a position where it couldn't do anything.
Exactly. So there's that, which once again, I think that's bad. Like something that you should know in prep, right? Knowing that like if you're gonna set Psychic Terrain, like knowing that yes, you can still Sucker Punch yourself, but like you probably want to figure something out with that Meowstic, right? Where you can actually make use of that. Maybe you bring Expanding Force on it, like that might be good. I don't know. Anyway, regardless of that, I think a different lead would have been good. I think you were potentially expecting Trick Room and Prison there, so maybe Aromatisse isn't quite the lead. But like I mentioned, I do think like a Spectre Amoonguss would have been solid, because at that point you can threaten to max Spectre, knowing that the Driftblim cannot target it. And that in itself is very threatening. Just knowing that you can potentially one-shot this Meowstic with a max Spectre and start snowballing your special attack stages with the Grim Neigh. I think that would have been super duper good. But you didn't do that, and I think you saw that like the same Metagross Spectre lead was like put you on the back foot from turn one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree. I think part of me kind of regrets. I going into the match, I was going to bring Nasty Plot on the Spectre instead of Bulldoze for the so that if I ever wanted to, I could have Nasty Plotted the Spectria and redirected with the Fungus, and then Max Phantasm basically is just KOing anything at that point, especially Weakness Policy Drifblim.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
So
do agree. It would have been the better move, to be fair. Like, I could have just doubled up into the Drifblim 2 turns back to back with the Fungus living. So, yeah, I
and
think
then
that was a safer play.
I think the second thing that I would have wanted to see more was I would have wanted to preserve your max until after his was done, personally. Did your Drampa have Protect on it? It did, right?
It did.
Yeah. Instead of maxing a couple of those turns, the Drampa, I might have protected and stalled a little bit, because I think Moltres would have been a much better max mon for you from the back in the later stages of the game. The Drampa obviously did its job very well, but I also think it opened itself up to a lot of like getting damaged a lot uh, by like the moon blasts from who was it again?
Tapu Fini.
Tapu Fini, yeah, stuff like that. And yes, the Tapu Fini, it is not as like Moltres isn't as good into Tapu Fini, but you don't have to really like worry too much about it as long as you just taunt and thunderbolt it over and over. You don't have to do like a max lightning into it, in my opinion.
I guess I understand what you're saying there, but like in game two, I was considering my max options, and the reason why I maxed the Drampa so early was so that I could get the max darkness into the Drifblim because it wasn't going to die, and I would start lowering the special defense of the Tapu Fini.
Yeah,
Put that along with a taunt into it, and it can't set up. This sets me up a lot better for the end game rather than relying on Drampa, which wouldn't have survived a Moonblast without being maxed. Because if I would have run the risk there that the Drifblim could have just got my one of my mons really low, and then the Tapu Fini is able to just do some damage. And I felt like in that situation, doing what I did was the correct play because I'm lowering his special defense, similar to how in your game where you were raising your special attacks.
right.
Max Lightning, it could have been a minimum roll. I doubt it, but like with it being Wakamberry, it came close to picking up that KO
Yeah,
against the Tapu Fini. Obviously, at that point, I'm not 100% sure on what his investment is. It could have been a little bit on the bulky side. I feel it was because Drampa's quite a strong mon.
yeah,
And then, yes, I don't know what's in the back, and I am playing to the fact that I expect a Rillaboom to be in the back. Hacktorus comes out and does surprise me a little bit. Um, but I think that game two was still the best end game I could have played for. The one thing from game one that I was annoyed with myself was I knew I should have just protected the Moltres, and I didn't. I went for the attack into the dual wing beat into the Tapu Fini, didn't get the KO, and then it just got straight up destroyed by a Skull.
yeah.
So that was something I was like, I should have preserved Moltres there, and I was considering it because then it made my end game so much harder. Like if I had that Moltres around, got the KO on the Tapu Fini, then that Moltres just sweeps up against Rillaboom and Meowstic.
I feel a little bit vindicated because I do think still that the correct bring was to bring like Aqua Jet, Primarina, Weakness Policy, Moltres in this game, but you know, you live and you learn. I don't know.
It's a piece of tech that I'm saving for another week, hopefully.
Yeah.
When I drafted
Anyway,
them, I saw that. But yeah, no, it definitely wasn't one of my best games I've played, but it was nice to pick up a win. It was a shame it was at the expense of a few mistakes of the prep of the other player.
yeah.
But It is what it is. It's better than losing to RNG and hacks, in my opinion.
As you say, we take those.
Yeah. So we move on to the
Yeah.
last fixture. Sorry, Ryan, do you have anything else to say?
No, I think y'all hit that one.
So we move on to the last fixture, which is the Cardiff Kamalas versus the Bavarian Landeros. This was a weird game when I look back at it. 2-1 win to the Kamalas. A notable thing that I really liked was the fact that he brought Still Valley Dark. It's kind of weird, I'm not going to lie. But it was nice because the Saberlight basically couldn't do anything against them. Because this is another week that the Bavarian Landeros brought a Saberlight with only priority moves and only supportive moves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of them moves being Ally Switch, which, to be honest, I don't dislike Ally Switch. I think Ally Switch is a competitively viable move, but I just feel like sometimes it's used on Mons it shouldn't be used on. And I feel like Saberlight is one of them Mons. Like,
yes,
there's so many other moves you can put on Saberlight over Ally Switch.
Completely agree with that.
He didn't bring Quash either, did he?
Nope.
Which again is like I think he lost the game because he used Ally Switch. Wherefore, if he'd had Quash, he could have easily have taken the game.
Yeah. I have to go in about like 8 minutes, so we can kind of touch on this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I just think like I don't know. I feel like the Bavarian Landeros threw a little bit in game 1 at one point, or sorry, game 2 at some point. They had a dominant win game 1, but game 2 they were like kind of mucking around in the late game with this like Tangela Sableye, and like I don't know. I feel like if he had just been a little bit more just focused on killing this Kabutops or whatever, like, or the little Togepi or whatever, like I think they could have, won that game pretty easily. I don't remember too much, but I remember thinking that while walking.
I remember thinking that he was often finding himself in a situation where it was Tangela and Sableye again.
Yeah.
Which is a weird combo.
Yeah, and like once again, Ally Switch, like Sableye has some serious 4-move syndrome. You have so many moves you want to bring on it, and like Ally Switch is almost always not one of them.
Yeah.
Like unless you have a very, very specific reason, right? Like unless
you've got a Mon weak to Psychic and you want to like put that pressure on, or a Mon that's going to be hit by a fighting move and you just want to, Ally Switch into that for the immunity, just to make the opponent question, oh, do I actually click this move against that Mon?
Yeah. So all in all, good win by the Kamalas to kind of scrape that second game out from underneath him, and then like playing a pretty solid third game, I'd say. I think that I just remember feeling like the game was a little messy in terms of like what people were boosting and targeting. It just felt a little random almost. But I couldn't really touch on it too much just because I don't super remember everything that happened very clearly.
Yeah, it was one of the first games to be played. What was really interesting I found is that I'm pretty sure that Kabutops got really lucky in one of them games where the Tangler got full parried when it was reduced to 1 HP or something, and then it was just lots of little things that allowed that Kabutops to live longer than it really should have. And this is the issue. Like, you got the Sableye out on the field with Tangler, and Sableye's got no damaging moves, so it can't do anything to just pick up that KO. If it was running like Sucker Punch, that's GG, Except for if Kabutops uses Aqua Jet. But any type of damaging move would have been just nice for it there. Like, one, Sableye lost out because of it was pure priority, and it struggled against the double Dark type lead. Then it's struggling because of it's got Ally Switch, which I think made the Charizard take a hit because of the opponent was trying to hit the Sableye, and he just Ally Switched his Charizard in to take the damage.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck with a Sableye, which can't do anything to the opponent as in terms of damaging moves, which sometimes you can use Will-O-Wisp Sableye with no damaging moves because at least you're getting some sort of damage onto the opponent. You're still ticking that health bar.
Yeah.
I just think it's the second week I've seen that he's brought the wrong set on that Sableye.
I agree. I'm once again, you need that Sableye to be, you don't have to have it be the carry of the team or anything, but you gotta at least have it be doing things throughout all stages of the game, and you have to kind of think about how that looks, or you have to sack it, right? Or you have to be intending to be like, okay, he's gonna do his job and then die, and not switch it out or anything. Which is counterintuitive with the fake out as well. I get that the fake out is good against Darkmons because you can actually hit it and stun them, but in general, Quash is definitely better than fake out on Sableye in particular. I'd say just because you get to use it every turn, rather than just the first turn it's out. You can also hit ghost types with it as well. So the only thing you can't hit with it is the dark types, obviously, and can be covered by something else, and of course you want a sucker punch, or you want a foul play or something like that on it.
Yeah. I also just find that Quash was a weird not to bring when you're running Sun against a team that has Venusaur.
Right.
And Cinderace, right? Cinderace is so fast.
So I don't know. I think that was the thing that I was most disappointed by when watching this set. I was like, oh, this it's just the Sableye is it's not a good Sableye for this match, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Maybe the Landorus and Funky thought otherwise, but to me, I felt like it provided more hindrance to the Landorus's team than it really helped. So, I think,
not to take from the Kamalas, did very
I think the Kamalas navigated some stressful situations pretty well.
Yeah, having 1 HP Kabutops for most of the game, yeah, that seems pretty stressful. But if you're expecting that sucker punch to come out and just praying for the best, and it doesn't come out, so yeah, I mean, props to him for getting out of that situation. But also, part of it is that Sableye set was just not good. Anyway.
Okay, so we'll move on from the results to our next section, which will be the leaderboards.
Here for a second.
Start recording. Back to this. View format. No view. Yeah. Present. Okay. 3, 2, 1, and we are live. So we move on to the leaderboards for the week, which show the Amateur Alchemies and the South Korean Swords, despite their losses this week, because they had that undefeated advantage so far, they still remain in the top 2 spots. But it does close the gap considerably between these top 6 teams now. The Somerville Scraggies have also remained in 3rd from another win. They're slowly catching up to the Amateur Alchemies. I just noticed here, I think I forgot to change this win-loss ratio on the Somerville Scraggies. I think that's +3 now. I move up into 4th, and I'm only in 4th because of the drag results have a game in hand. You, Masenko, if you win one of your next matches, then you'll probably be way higher than me. You'll probably be in 3rd. You've got potential to be that high up, but it's hard to tell about that extra game knowledge of that unplayed game. And then the Dark Lord Greninjas make a resurgence back onto the top 6, and this time entering with Piloswine as their MVP after they've traded away the Kartana, which both Piloswine and Kartana anyway have the same kill-death ratio of 5, so that's quite something. Piloswine has yet to die in a match, so
tanky boy.
Yeah, it's doing well for him. I love that Piloswine's up there. And even though I haven't brought Primarina this week, Primarina's still up there. So we move on to a quick flash over last week's rankings. We had the Swords at the top there, some notable players, which are the Saffron Swords at the top. Scraggy's 4th. You've got the Beedrills in 8th. You've got the Dark Lords down here in 11th. But we can have a look and a play around now with where we are ranking the teams. So because of Oddball has left the division, we've put him now as just an X. There's no. Obviously, he's a strong team, but as we're ranking teams that are playing, there's no reason to include him in the rankings at the moment.
Right.
So we're going for a top 15. So theoretically, every team who was below Oshawott moved up 1. But so the Lilico of Lycanrocs, they've still got like 2 games to play.
Yeah.
So honestly, I've got to keep them in 15th. The London Lucarios have got to stay in 14th. Unfortunately, I know they've lost every game, and the Lycanrocs have got 2 games they need to play, but they're both still undefeated. Sorry, reverse that.
Winless.
Winless, yeah. So there's no reason to really move them up. We get to the interesting part. Okay, so the Crummock Colossals, I think they've made some good trades. So I don't know like how much I want to move them up yet, because yes, they've made some good trades, but we need to see the results of them trades. I think more so with the Crummock Colossals.
Personally, I would put them above Bavarian Landorus at this point. I think, like, just based on at least this week, despite the fact that they both lost, I felt like the Crummock Colossals showed a very strong game against me. Like, they were definitely going blow for blow and making some really, really creative and good plays throughout the entire game, like we've touched upon.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with the Bavarian Landorus, you see the repeat mistake with the Sableye build. You see,
it's because he's in this VGC community that's a lot more creative than standard. Maybe he's kind of stuck in this little creative mindset that turns out it's not actually working.
I don't know.
I think there's a difference, though. Like, I would consider... So like, my game against the South Croydon Soars, I'd say crosses the line in terms of not being like, there's a line that you cross eventually where creativity just turns into sort of just like randomness, almost like chaos.
Yeah. More meme, less effective.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I don't think that's exactly what the Landers are doing at the moment. I think they are. It's not so much meme. I just think that they're not picking the right sets for the matchup at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that because of this, especially the Sableye thing, like, it just makes me think that maybe they haven't learned from their mistakes in a previous game, right? So I kind of, whereas I see improvement from the Crummock Colossals, finding the time to prep and bringing a very interesting, creative team, but yet still effective team against myself. Whereas I think that the Bavarian Landorus, despite having like a solid team in general, like that they brought to this matchup, kind of just made poor decisions, I think, throughout the match, and also kind of messed up on the Sableye. So I don't see that improvement right now. I'm sure they'll move up. I think they have a really good team. But then I'm sure that they'll move up if they maybe, I don't know, start shoring up a lot of these issues that we keep pointing out.
Yeah. So the Crummock Colossals can stay in 12th. Move up into 12th. For the similar reasons as we just listed, really. They're shoring up their games a little bit more now, and they're spending some more time prepping. They've put some more time and thought into the team, made the trades that they needed. I think the Crummock Colossals still have room to move up even higher. Even though they're at a record of 1-4, it's going to be difficult, but they can pull out a 5-win streak from here. And finish 6-4, and that's playoff potential. So
yeah,
exactly.
So then we've got, at the moment, I've got a Slash Blades in 11th. Again, it's another
They've yet
team
to
that
play,
didn't.
right?
Yeah, they've yet to play. So it's not so much as this position here isn't a testament to how they're doing, but rather how everyone else is doing around them. It's like, I'm sure like the Blades would be higher, but it's just because they haven't played this week. We haven't got anything to go on. But I have to say, like, based on the fact that the Merseyside Marowaks and the Kamalas have won their matches, they kind of deserve to move up. I could make an argument that the Marowaks deserve to be in 9th and the Kamalas in 10th. That would be moving from 12th and 13th, respectively.
Do you think, despite that, since even though I lost and they won, they should go ahead of me, or do you still think that?
I still think they're just below your type thing. I still think that the 9th is as high as I'm willing to go at the moment because they're finally showing some improvement. Not finally showing improvement, but they're finally getting a bit more confident with their team and what their team can do. So I think that 9th for the moment is a good benchmark for them. I think it's like middle of the pack. So I think that's fine. The same with the Kamalas. Like, they had a bit of not a sloppy game, but a little bit. It wasn't a assured win. They played well to what was, but I think that they've made another trade as well, haven't they? So I don't know. I just feel like 9th and 10th here feels right for where the teams are at the moment.
I think that they're both about. I would say, like, it would be hard for me to place them comparatively. I think both of them are kind of in the same spot right now.
Yeah.
In terms of just, I think, like, the Merseyside Marowaks have really decent prep, especially this week they had a lot of help with it, and I think that's a good thing. Everybody should try getting second opinions on their prep.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to like execution, I think they fumble around a little bit more. Whereas I think the Kamalas have like sort of, I've seen them be more like, I guess, average, right? They have like a good team. They make solid plays sometimes not. They bring good sets overall, but I haven't seen anything like that stood out as like really creative or outstanding, just based on what I've seen. So I think that kind of averages out for each other and kind of puts them in the same spot for me.
Yeah,
but we can say Merseyside goes ahead here.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially since he upset the Alchemies.
Exactly. So and like, there could be an argument made that Marowaks go one place above the Charlotte Beagles because obviously the Beagles lost. But considering we've already moved Marowaks up from like 13th to 9th, it's like, I think they've had quite a jump as it is. So I've left Beagles and the Luxrays in 7th and 8th because they both lost this week. So they both took a loss. But I believe that they're still good teams despite this loss. Both teams lost to teams that are now are above them in the rankings. I think Bryan, again, still, you're just, as Carmine said last week, it's just like you're perfect at the moment to just be smack bang in the middle.
Okay.
I feel like I don't know. I feel at the moment that's fine. Like, that's still good. Like, I don't know how you feel on that.
I mean, it reflects the standings pretty well, so I'm okay with it, I guess.
I think the only reason why I've got Bioptic, I know Bioptic took a 2-0 loss this week against me, but I feel like that was down to a one-turn misplay and a bit of bad prep. So I feel like I think I just kind of want to hear what Masenko has to say, and I know he's just dipped out for a second, but we can come back to this position exactly. I think there is an argument that Bioptic just falls below and you just slightly rise up because you did take a game off your opponent this week.
Mm-hmm.
There is that there is completely reasonable argument to be made. So we'll come back to that one in a second. I think the Dark Lord Greninjas fit in perfectly to 6th because
I would agree.
I know this is touching upon the very similar to how the standings are on the leaderboard, but I think that the Greninjas played a really good game this week. Good prep. They're proving to be quite a decent, a really good team, and their record is now they've got 3 wins. So 3 wins to out of 4 is it's good. And their only loss, I believe, was like their first game they played. I think against Oddball.
They lost to Masenko last week.
Yes, it's 3 wins to 2. I forget we're in week 5. So yeah, so like they've taken a loss against Masenko, which is a really high ranked player, and they've taken a loss against Oddball, which is another really high ranked player, and then they've just
was a high ranked player, I guess.
And then they've just edged out a win against you, which was a decently high to mid range player as well. So I feel like moving to 6th, it's a good bench line. I think I've moved myself at 1 spot, which is just basically replacing the Oshawott spot because now that they've dropped. And the only reason for this is because yes, I won. I don't think it was the most confident of wins. I kind of won a little bit off the mistakes of my opponent, which is still a valid win because I'm still playing the game which is being presented to me.
Like you said, like Masenko said earlier, your match was kind of one of those where you say, we take those.
Yeah, and so I don't think I particularly outplayed my opponent. Maybe I kind of slightly outprepped my opponent, and I knew what he was going to do at any given time. Like, he could have easily have steamrolled me with that weakness policy driftbling, but I played smart with like protecting here and there and just wasting his Dynamax weakness policy mons turns and stuff, and to get myself into better positions. But I don't think it was anything outstanding or amazing, so I think 5th is perfectly fine for me to stay in at the moment. And then we come to the top 4, which is the most interesting because of all of these teams. Masenko is on the other end. He's still got a game in hand, but I still believe he belongs in the top 4. Now, the reason why I've ordered them this way, I put the Alchemies in 4th because, similar to like last week, they're a good team, but they're able to get disrupted by good prep, which is what the Marowaks did to them this week, and it was a considerable upset. The other issue is that last week they kind of only won due to what was it? Statistically unfavorable circumstances, as Dragon keeps referring to it as, but RNG hacks. That was really the only reason why they were guaranteed the win last week. Of course, I made a few misplays, but and then this week they got beaten by some really good prep, and they were just out prepped. And it's the first time we've seen the Alchemies falter a little bit. The South Croydon Swords, I could make the argument that they do belong just below the Alchemies because of, even though the Alchemies got out prepped, they still played a solid game and it brought it really close. Where for this week's match for the South Croydon Swords, they showed a weakness in the team and their team building, that they need to respect the trick room modes of their opponents more. We've up to this point we've seen them dominate with like speed and everything, but I think you know what, I'm going to
I would say because the Alchemies had a closer matchup. And then I just think with the South Croydon Swords team, it's very trick room weak. If he doesn't bring like the anti trick room stuff with like the Gengar and all that kind of stuff, which is trick room.
I think that was more of a blunder in his prep than anything else. Like he didn't have a solid way to stop that trick room or to reverse it. Or
this was the very first time he's played against a trick room team. We haven't seen what he can do against a trick room team. So I'd like to see what his team can do, what he can do with his very fast team to stop the trick room. I'd like to see that happen.
I think he just needs to respect the fact that even if teams don't inherently offer a load of trick room potential, teams like myself, the Somerville Scraggies, and a few
arguably myself
and yourself, and yourself, we've all got these trick room modes which are, and even the amateur Alchemies, we've all got these trick room teams or teams which have a trick room mode, and they need to be respected, even if you don't want to fully prep around that strategy. They're still all viable Trick Room teams that can really disrupt the South Croydon Soars. I think the Alchemies, as you say, I think they deserve to just stay in that third place from last week. I don't think they need to be moved. Because, I think we've given enough of a justification for that. Masenko, I am perfectly fine with just keeping him at number 2 at the moment because he did win this week. I don't see him needing to drop down. It was a good win. He played well. He got out of position a little bit, but he still played to his outs. And that game 3 was a really good game for Masenko.
Can you refresh? Matrix, it's blurry for me.
I can try, but midstream. Does that work?
No, I'm still
not really, but it's okay. I think we know a little bit about
it's another cut I'm gonna have to make. Great.
That's okay.
Oops. Sorry, Matrix.
This video is gonna be a while before it comes up.
That's okay.
Can you see it now?
Yeah. Perfect.
Cool. So 3, 2, 1. So Masenko's team is staying at 2 just because of it was out of position a little bit at times, but relatively good control of the game to see his outs and play to them to his win conditions. He got a little bit disrupted in game 2, but it was more of a surprise, and he still didn't get spooked by that, and actually played an even better game 3. I don't see any reason to change his position at all. However, I do think the Somerville Scraggies deserve the top spot for this week because up to this point, yes, they're 4-1, but that one loss is only because of the a disruption from the opponent with the having to play on Showdown instead of playing on the Switch. Bringing the wrong comfy because of it all, and just being basically his whole game plan was just disrupted before he even played, type thing.
Right.
The other reason is that the games he's won, he's played against the South Croydon Soars. He's played against the Orlando Oshawots. He's played against, I don't remember, was it Dave?
He played. His first was Dr. Dave.
Yeah. So, and I don't remember who his 4th winner was against.
Was it Bavarian?
It must have been Bavarian. I remember that was when the other Sableye was.
He had the that was the.
Oh yes, against
the Serena play.
And so he's won against 2 really top teams like the South Croydon Soars and the Orlando Oshawots, and the Bavarian Landers and the Crummer Colossals were ranked pretty highly in our initial draft analysis. And they're still decently tough teams to beat. I just think that the Scraggies have just been playing consistently good games. They've been implementing great strategies and executing it really well. So,
not to mention that a lot of them are very dominant wins, which is like worth mentioning because it's one thing to scrape out a win, right? It's one thing to go blow for blow and end the game with a 0-0, for instance, right? In your case, as opposed to executing a strategy beautifully and clearly knowing exactly what's coming from your opponent, or prepping at least in such a way that even if the opponent does surprise you, you still just have such a solid notion for your team that you're able to play to that and still win. And he's shown that every week he just seems better and better. So I gotta agree with this top spot for him.
And that's basically the rankings. I did want to just touch upon with Masenko, now that you're back for a second, the position as 7th and 8th, like the Luxuries and the Shark Bee Drills. Do you think that that's a fair positioning, or do you think they could be rearranged a little bit?
I would swap. I would 100% swap them.
I was talking to Bryan saying I think an argument could be made that they could just be swapped a little bit.
Yeah, I think I think this week you played, like, even though you lost, and even though you blundered on the Dracovish, I still think like that was a first and foremost like a tactical in game mistake, and those happen to everyone. You had a lot to consider about this set that you were trying to decipher, and I will say you deciphered it fairly reasonably. Like you played a good game and you made good decisions for the information that you were given, and like you had good prep. I think you brought the correct mons overall. You not bringing your sand mode, I think, was totally like I I would have done that. Like I think that's like something that I would have done, is not bring the sand mode. Um, so yeah, like you seemed like you did really good this week despite the loss, and like I don't know, man, just like the Lux Rays, I want them to do well. I keep rooting for them, but every week I see some like I don't know, they seem sloppy on a lot of different plays they'll make, and then especially this week, like such an important matchup against like a very top rated team. It feels like the prep was and like I don't want him to feel bad if he worked really hard on that prep and whatnot, but I just think that like you gotta
follow through.
yeah, you gotta think a little bit more about this stuff. Like a little bit of thought would show you like kind of got to think about, okay,
He
if I'm
could
reading
have
this,
taken game 1 when I did take game 1 too.
yeah,
Like
that too,
was
that
a place
too,
of-
yeah.
And just to reiterate, because I know Masenko just dipped out for a minute, we've put the Dark Lord Greninjas up in 6th because I think it's very justifiable at this point. He's becoming, as we said, he's a bit of a dark horse here at the moment. And his only loss has been to a top, well, one of his only losses has been to one of the top teams, which is the Oshawotts, and who was the
And
other
me.
loss? You, exactly. So his losses have been to two really top tiered teams. So like I think it's understandable for him to be sick. If anything, he could be even higher than me. Like I wouldn't be opposed to that. But we both lost to you, so and I lost to the Alchemies. So like it's like who's a little bit higher than the Oshawott. So I think
I think the 5 and the 6 are fine.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair placement.
I've put the Alchemies above the Saws just based on the way in which both teams lost this week.
Okay, I can agree to that. I just I think it's a kind of a close call between spots 2, 3, and 4 in terms of who's better.
Yeah.
Especially since the Swords did beat me at one point.
I know, but if we're also considering how the team compositions are at the moment, which is what we've taken into consideration for like the Dark Lord Greninjas, again, they've made some really good trades this week, which we'll get into in a second, which is again contributing to why they're so high up now. Like we're also still rating the teams. Like the Crow Colossals are above the Landorus because they've got a better team now again. So I think if you two were to play again, I think it would be a lot closer. So if I was to predict the outcome of you two meeting in the playoffs, I think with your new team, and I think you could probably edge it out now that you're more familiar with how he plays as well.
Yeah, I would. I think I would definitely give him a better match. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I think the top 3 are or sorry, not top 3. I guess top 4 honestly are very
close.
Very close.
Yeah.
I do think the Somerville Scraggies have
the edge
very proven themselves as like a very scary team to go up against.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see cracks show in the Alchemies and the the Swords. Yeah.
Swords, yeah.
Exactly. However, I still don't think outside of bad prep from the Scraggies or a misprep in that we haven't really seen any real cracks in their team, like the team and the game plans yet.
Yeah.
So like I think the top 1 is quite definitive, but 2 through 4 is quite close, and then you've got like 5 to 8 pretty close together, and then from there on out it's a bit of a who wins this week, who loses. It's all so close. It's so difficult to rank them. But yeah, that's our definitive ranking for week 5. A few changes have been made to the positions. Masenko being the only one who actually stayed in the same place, and Alchemies. But hey ho. So we'll just briefly go over some of the predictions. But first of all, we'll just mention the trades that have been made this week. There have been some considerable trades. So first of all, we've got the Amateur Alchemies, which have traded away that Cottony, which we mentioned at the start of the video. They've traded the Cottony for some Tailwind support in Crobat. Crobat actually offers a lot more than just Tailwind support, but obviously that's one of the reasons why you get it, because of Inner Focus. But it's a nice offensive poison flying type, very fast. It can provide some fast utility as well, but Tailwind, like base 130 speed, which is base 130 speed, which can max out at 200, is good for a Tailwind set, especially like Inner Focus can't be faked out. So
I really like this trade, mainly because of the exact reason the Alchemies I think lost this week is they have their weakness so far has been the lack of consistent aggressive leads. And the Crobat really provides that with Tailwind.
Yeah.
Now that Chandelure can be so much faster now,
Yeah.
And the Crobat has 130 base speed, which is very,
200
very,
max.
Yeah. So obviously, this is just good for his team. And like now he can enable a lot of his other mons to go on the offensive right away, as opposed to having to sort of like wait for this Lapras and Alchemy to set up potentially. Not to mention, now even from the back, Alchemy can decorate at twice the speed that it could before. It doesn't have, obviously on the field. You'd want Crobat with something else, but once Crobat goes down or switches out or it U-turns or whatever, now Alchemy can come out and be twice the speed, and that's actually really, really strong.
What's good about this is that they did have so they had a Tailwind setter in Altaria in Tier 3 prior to this. Like, they traded it away for Cottony. Initially, they wanted the Crobat for that week, but due to the rules, they'd already traded for, like, Leafeon earlier on, so they couldn't make the trade for Crobat without also making another trade to lower their points in order to get it, which is what they wanted that Crobat for this week's matchup just gone. But so that's why I think they made that trade for the Cottony, just to get some pseudo speed control before they could pick up their Tailwind setter, which is what they wanted.
Do they have one trade remaining, or are they out of trades?
I think they have 2 trades remaining. Maybe 1. Okay. No, they have 1 trade remaining. So they also picked up a Lantern in place of Lycanroc, which it's a nice bulky mon. It's got that Volt Absorb, which can be nice with if you didn't want to bring Raichu, say, and you wanted to switch in. It's also got the Water Absorb for Chandelure, which is so it does support his 2 of his main mons.
But with really Water Absorb and Volt Absorb, you have to bring them in on the target.
Yes, it doesn't redirect, but it still makes you like question which one it is, especially if he's bringing Chandelure and Moltres. Moltres as well. Chandelure, Moltres, Lapras. You don't know which ability it'll be running, so you could be thinking it's Volt Absorb, but it's Water Absorb, and so you've got to be a little bit aware. It's also a very bulky mon.
I gotta get going. Unfortunately, but you guys just keep going. I'm sorry.
No worries.
All right. Have a good night.
All right. Cheers.
Peace out, everyone.
So we then move on to your trade, which was the Toxtricity G-Max for the Alchemy G-Max. That was just to kind of help shore up your fantasy core a bit as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. And the way I had intended to use the Toxtricity was more as like a Volt Switch thing to bring in the stand code. That's how I predicted it when making the pick. And it just turned out with, I guess, the way the schedule turned out and the way my opponents were picking, that it just wasn't. I just had more viable plays than that.
Yeah. I think Alchemy is a really good mon.
It's the first time I've ever used Alchemy. I don't know a whole ton about it. I know my deck rate's really good. It's got a lot of good support stuff. I now know what its abilities are. It's some really
Really good abilities.
interesting doubles, really good doubles specific abilities with the Sweet Veil and the Roma Veil. I know about the Roma Veil because of your
Aromatisse.
The Aromatisse, and now I have something like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't get Trick Room, I don't think.
No,
Or
but
does
it's
it?
really good because
Yeah.
of it means that both mons on your side of the field can't be taunted, which means you don't need to waste
Right.
mental herb if you want to set Trick Room with like Bronzong or
Right,
something.
exactly.
So,
There's a good
I think it's good.
support thing, and then I think it would be in the same vein as Toxtricity in that I would never actually Gigantamax it, even though I
You just
did in
did.
game 1. Even though I just did. Like I said, wasn't my plan, but
It's
I
good.
think in that moment it was the play to
Yeah, definitely.
Dynamax it.
I mean,
There was a game to Gigantamax Toxtricity, whether he brought rain or not. I thought that was the game too.
yeah. And to be fair, like Alchemy's special attack is like over 100, so it's not even that bad of like an offensive mon. Like you can realistically run an offensive alchemy and catch your opponent off
And
guard.
its Gmax move is a healing move.
Gmax finale.
Yeah, does it just heal? Is it one of those that just
Alchemy.
heals Alchemy, or does it heal my teammate as well?
I'm not sure. I don't often run
We'll look
Gmax.
into that.
So then
We'll look
the
into that.
next trade was the Cardiff Kamalas, which have traded Silvally for Articuno Gala, Galarian Articuno, which I think is good because he's got this more physical mode at the moment now with like Cinderace. And Articuno Gala with competitive really just pressurizes the opponent from just intimidate spamming the Cinderace.
Yeah,
Which
Articuno
is
is
nice.
also a very viable tailwind setter.
Well, it is Tailwind because it can get Tailwind or Trick Room.
Yeah, it is tailwind. Yeah, it's a better. Didn't he have Sigilif? So he just
Yeah,
got a
it's
better
Sigilif.
He got a tail room setter. He
I
got the better tail room setter.
I think it's better than Sigilif. I hate Sigilif, um, but it's good. It's more offensive. Like if it gets some competitive boosts and it's got the Trick Room. It's got the Tailwind. It's nice. It's just like this all-purpose mon. I do think it lacks a little bit on the offensive side. Like it just seems to always
Right. It's not
lack
very
in
common
everything
in
it wants.
the meta, so maybe someone who's maybe a little less experienced might not know about its competitive. So
Uh,
I might play into something there, maybe, possibly.
yeah,
Because
I
you get
do.
I did that once, and it just on ladder when it first came out, and it just completely wrecked my team. So
It also gets like
don't.
it's nice. It's a decent mon. I can see a few Carmines or something. Like run it slightly bulkier, get some offensive going
Yeah.
that way. So it'll be interesting to see how it's used.
Yeah.
But we move on to the more juicier picks, which is the Dark Lord Greninjas. They've dropped that Kartana at last. Like,
Yeah.
no disrespect, I really do like the Kartana. I think
Mhm.
the new pick is so much better. Like, he's gone for
Oh yeah,
He's
definitely.
picked Celesteela. Celesteela, man, is
Celestial, it's got the bulk on both sides. It's got the attacking power on both sides.
and
Decent
it's
speed, decent HP.
well, it's not speed's mediocre, but like you don't
Oh,
pick a Celesteela.
maybe I'm misremembering its speed,
It's
but
speed's
it's got
like around
access to the max airstream. It's a decent
yeah.
max target, better
It's
max target than Kartana,
yeah. Its speed is
and
like
it'll live longer.
60 or something, which
I thought it was
is
like 80.
no,
But,
it's 60. Like
okay.
its actual stat is like 60. Um,
Mhm.
but
Oh yeah,
which is good because you
I'm
can run it
misremembering
slightly
it.
slower for Trick Room. You can run it slightly faster to get airstream boosts and outspeed some things. It can iron defense. It can steel spike. It can leech seed, protect
Leech
stall.
Seed,
It can
yes. Leech
flamethrower.
Seed's oh god.
It can meteor beam, power herb. It can weakness policy. It can assault vest. It can run physical, it can run special, it just does so much, and it can be a
So much
complete and
Celestial can do.
utter
Yeah.
nuisance to try and remove. And pairing it with a team like his, which is this rain mode, is just
Mm-hmm.
oh so good. The only thing he's missing in the moment, in my opinion, is
It's a lightning
lightning
rod
rod.
user.
Yeah, a lightning rod user, which honestly I
And
can see
I
him picking
don't
up.
think there are a lot. There's if you wanted to go extremely weird, there's Electric.
There's
There's
there's a better one still available.
regular Pikachu and Pichu.
There's Ride On, which is still available, which I think is
Right
a
on,
really
yeah.
nice.
Oh yeah,
small
right
thing to pick
on,
up.
yeah.
The other
Right
trade
on,
he's
yeah.
made is Polyrath for Toxicroak, and Toxicroak is nice. It's another fake out user, go figure.
Yeah.
For his already fake out heavy team. But Toxicroak's
My
pretty
only
good.
criticism with Toxic Croak is it doesn't get the close combat, which is I think is
Yeah.
missing on its moveset. It's got the cross chop, it's got the drain punch, but I just think in fighting, I think you would rather use the close combat for
I
the
mean,
power, even if it does drop your attack and your defense and special defense.
I don't think you're always running Toxicroak though for that power.
And
Like
cross
it's
chop is not a reliable hit move.
I don't think you're always running Toxicroak though for that close combat offensive power. Like it's more of a just like chip here and there support and stuff like that, like a mediocre
Yeah,
mon. And
that's possible. Yeah,
it's also got like dry skin, which means it's get a water immunity as well as
it'll
reduce
get
health in rain.
leftovers.
Yeah,
It works as leftovers in the rain.
yeah. So it's still
So
it's
yeah,
still a
it
decent
works on
mon
his team.
to add to the team.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
then
absolutely.
the other team is the Crimach Colossals, and they've dropped Fletchinder for Clink Lang. And honestly, it kind of acts like a
Yeah,
pseudo Metagross in the fact that it's got that clear body, it can run weakness policy. Yes, its move pool is very
it's not weak
limited.
to dark.
Yes,
Not weak to dark, but has that
yeah,
fighting weakness though. So
it's got a limited move pool in basically being pure steel and electric with a few like normal and I think it might have a rock move or a ground move here and there, but it's very
did he pick up plus or minus another plus or minus Pokemon
no, I don't think so.
to
Yeah, to do the
yeah.
plus and minus thing, no, I
I,
don't think he did.
okay. I think
But
he. I mean, that's just. I'm just saying like that's something he could do.
yeah,
But
but I
also,
think
my Toxtricity's now available. I don't know if he's.
he's not going to remove his colossal, is he?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Clink Clang is a good mon. Like it's a good solid steel type from like tier 3. So and
Yeah.
obviously he must have been finding it hard to set that tailwind with Fletchinder without it getting faked out or
Hmm.
just disrupted. The other trade he
Right.
made is Porygon Z. So he's dropped that Porygon Z Indeedee mode, keeping the Indeedee, but picking up Dragonite. And now Dragonite, we all
Right.
know from like Series 7, Series 8, that that inner focus Aqua Jet into the Colossal is a nice surefire priority to get that Colossal really rolling. So I suspect we'll be seeing a few more and that's not just what Dragonite can do. It's very versatile. It can be run special, physical.
Yeah.
It doesn't often get run as like supportive disruption, but it still gets access to like thunder waves and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
like he might want to run it a little bit more supportive alongside the colossal, or he could run it offensive with like Assault Vest, Weakness Policy, or Lumberry 1 week. So
Mhm.
I think that's overall, yes, he's dropped that Porygon Z mode, but he's shoring up his other existing modes to the point where they're a
Yeah.
little bit more reliable and harder for teams to prep for that mode in particular. So
He still has a little bit of a weakness to fighting though with that pickup of the Kling Clang, but
yeah,
again, the Dragonite's there for flying to counter that, so it's not bad.
yeah, and he's also got like Frostlass, which is a ghost immunity. He's got Indeedee for Follow
Yeah.
Me, and so or slash expanding force into fighting type. So I still think it's going all
Yeah.
right. He's also finally
Yeah.
established himself a fantasy core.
Hmm.
Because if he was missing his Firewater Grass Core, I still think well, okay, he's got a Firewater Grass Core, but if your Firewater Grass Core is Grookey, Shellos, and Colossal, then it's it's a little bit lacking.
It's not. It's not. It's the lacking core definitely. Is
Yeah,
Thwacky back? You get Thwacky?
sorry, I meant Grookey.
No, I'm saying Thwacky's available now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's available. It's a tier 3. So I don't know if you'd want to splash out on that after already picking up Klinklang. He's also
I
got
don't know what his other tier. Oh, his other tier threes are the Tauros and the
Frostlass.
Frostlass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
So
if he wants to do that. So never mind. I
and
just thought maybe he'd rather upgrade Grookey.
upgrading his fantasy core from being just Morlul as his only mon of the fantasy core to having Dragonite and Klinklang as well. It's quite nice. So nice to see. So we move off the trades and we can go up against the week 6 predictions. So I think we've gone a lot into their teams so far, so we can just start listing off who we think will win and just like a short reason why, so we don't spend too long on it. So we've got the London Lucarios versus the Somerville Scraggies, and honestly, I think this is, as it stands, a matchup of the top of the league against the bottom, the within the bottom,
next to bottom.
Yeah. So I think I can comprehensively say the Somerville Scraggies will win this unless they make some sort of a blunder. They can play inside Trick Room. They've got the Reggie Rock to be able to play inside Trick Room, and that matches up really well against the likes of like Torkoal, and the Turtonator. And okay, Scrafty doesn't intimidate, but Scrafty can possibly run some coaching tech into his mons and make it a bit better. But I think that some of those Scraggies have got this.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm considering how much of a Trick Room team London Lucarios is, just having a mon that can work inside your opponent's Trick Room, if it is a full Trick Room team, it's just really good to have.
And that Comfey does not care about Rage Powder. Priority.
It goes before Rage Powder.
Yep, exactly. So honestly, it's going to be difficult. I think, so I think Somerville Scraggies will win this 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Then we got the South Korean Swords versus the Bavarian Landorus, and I think this is a interesting matchup. We've got a very fast...
we've got Landorus also have a trick. I think, don't the Bavarian Landorus have a kind of Trick Room mode?
I think they've got an ability to, but I don't think it's like something they'd go to. I would check, but
I think maybe in this matchup that's something they can think about, the Trick Room stuff, because even a not very great Trick Room mode is going to do really good against this really speed mode.
I'm just having a quick look.
Maybe. Who's their trick? Laptop Haunter sets Trick Room.
I
think redirect.
They could go for a Trick Room team here, but I don't know. I think there's other.
Because
it's not their strongest.
Because I don't think they're fast. Their stuff is fast enough.
No, but you've also got to remember that he's going to be running this. If he doesn't run Quash this week on Sableye, but yeah, I think personally, unless another upset happens, I think the South Korean Swords should win.
Yeah,
I think
I would agree.
Terrakion could be putting a bit of work this week with maybe even go beat up Terrakion. Who knows?
Yeah. True.
So then we got the Lilycove Lycanrocs versus the Drowsy Dracozolt, and I think the Dracozolt will win this.
Same.
I think the Lycanrocs will end up using a similar team to the teams that they will be using.
That's what he said. He was going to basically use the same 3 teams.
So a non-specific team against the Drowsy Dracozolt is going to be really difficult to pick up.
I'd argue a non-specific team, even against the London Lucarios, would be really tough.
Well, yeah, but London Lucarios is one of them that if you bring a specific team, you're probably going to lose. You have to bring a specific team for the Lucarios. But the Dracozolts, less so. But I think the Dracozolts will win this quite confidently, especially considering the Lycanrocs do really well against like physical teams, but the Dracozolts have got such a heavy special mode that that Umbreon is going to be needed to do a lot of work. So then we move on to your match with the Merseyside Marowaks, and I honestly think you can take this.
Yeah.
You've got a decent...
There's some stuff to think about. His Trick Room's a little better than mine. Just a little bit. He's got more Trick Room mons in the Trick Room.
I think you've got better Trick Room setters / reverse setters, so...
I still have... well, I'm not going to say it on
No, I know. I don't want
Can't.
you've been talking
Right.
to.
But yeah, we'll talk about this later.
Yeah,
We'll talk about this later.
I know you've been talking to Masenko, and that I haven't actually spoken to you about it properly yet. But like my initial impressions, which means that I'm not being too biased yet, so I don't know what you're planning. But I think you've got the better tools to deal with his trick room than I had. So I think you can be a little bit more confident in that. I think you still have to watch out for that speed swap. So you got to have a plan to deal with fast and slow.
Yeah.
As always.
But honestly, I think I do.
Yeah,
I think.
I mean, you got your sand mode, so that's great. And then you've got to just be careful of that Amoongus and whatever it's redirecting you from. So, which obviously you've got a decent grass type, so Barraskewda is a little bit struggling there. So I think although you got to remember Barraskewda gets Propeller Tail, so it can ignore that Storm Drain redirection.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, I do think you've got the tools, and I think you've been playing pretty well, and I think you can outplay him. So,
all right,
I'll take it on to the Krumma Colossals versus the Alchemies. I'm excited for this matchup. I think the Colossals, if they prep well, I think they could take this.
Yeah,
I think the Alchemies like to try and plan for a load of different leads and stuff and different scenarios, but I know for a fact that the Colossals can really surprise you with what they bring and it be effective. So we saw in like in game 1 of last week with the Alchemies where they were a little bit caught off guard with the lead of the Merseyside Marowaks. If the Krumma Colossals can do something similar like that again to the Alchemies, then I think they can take this. I'm gonna say the Krumma Colossals are gonna win. They also need to win.
Yeah, this is kind of
no pressure.
No, it's kind of a must win if he wants to be in playoffs.
Yeah,
if he wants to be in playoffs. It's kind of a must win because that 6-4 is in this kind of league kind of the bare minimum you have to play to have a shot in playoffs, and at least in our division specifically, and the Johto division specifically. We have one of the harder divisions in the league. It's a lot more open, and that just doesn't lead well to a lot of early misplays where you don't do as much prep, or your team isn't very good, or you wait till much later to make those key trades. So this is really going to be a make or miss week for the Krumma Colossals.
Yeah, definitely. So then we see the Dark Ninjas versus the Southeast Luxrays, and again, this is another matchup I'm really interested in. We got that rain mode. I think this is two teams and two players that are very similar in their experience with VGC. I know I kind of feel like the Dark Ninjas are like the Bioptic of
last year.
Yeah. And
except I think
he's got a better
drafted.
He's drafted a better team and he's made good trades to shore up his team even more. So like they give me similar energy to like the way that they are slightly inexperienced and the newer players like draft leagues.
I'm a big fan of the Dark Lords Greninjas. I'm just letting you know I'm a big fan of that team.
Yeah, no, Samadal is
and the coach himself as well.
Samadal's a great guy. So and so
I really like him. He was a pleasure to play against.
Yeah. It's a shame that I'm not playing against him this season, actually. But at the same time, I'm quite glad now because this team scares me so much.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad that I don't have to play him anymore.
So I think
that's it. Yeah.
I'm going to call that I think the Greninjas will win because I just think that they have I like their team that slightly bit more.
I think they're bulkier than Luxray, so I think they can might be able to take the hits from the speedier Luxrays and bring them back even harder. I think, especially with the Celesteela now, being able to take less damage from fire. Well, he doesn't really have much fire. He only has the thing.
Getting that Celesteela now, the Luxrays only have Sensor Scorch as stab damage against the Celesteela. Stab's super effective. And because they got no electric type. And that means that he's having to rely on it.
If it's in a rain mode, it's not even super effective. And at least in the damage calcs anyway.
And that means that he's having to rely on a fire and bug type. against the Celesteela. Like, if the Greninjas just play smart to the Celesteela, like, Rillaboom does nothing. Tapu Fini struggles against the team. A lot of Luxray's hard hitters don't do as much as he wants it to do. So I think the Greninjas have a really strong matchup here. So I think they'll win.
Yeah, they have a good matchup here. I'm looking forward to this matchup.
And then it's moving on to my team versus the Aggie / Blades. And it's hard. The Aggie / Blades have got a decent team. Like, they've got a decent draft.
Yeah.
I don't want to say
know how to
too much because I haven't looked into it too much. I'm gonna back for myself, but yeah, it's gonna be another difficult match to prep for, I think. Looking at his team, he's obviously got the speed threat that is Regieleki. He's got the decent rain mode in like Kingdra Politoed. He's got but they're not like super OP. He's got the Aggie Slash, which I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he runs special this week. Although I do have a very specially bulky team.
Right.
So it's yeah. I think he's got a decent team. I think we're about evenly matched from a initial look at. I'll have to look into it more to be able to really figure it out, but I'll start looking at that in the next few days.
Yeah.
And then our bye week, because of the Oshawots have left, is the Cardiff Kamalas, and they'll be making up that match in makeup week against one of these lovely coaches. Yeah. So, yeah, that takes us to the end of the week 5 power rankings. And wow, I think that was a kind of a long session longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I think it went longer than we thought it would, but I think it was a good session.
Yeah, it was good. These rankings do take a lot of time to prepare, and a lot of time from us and you guys. Like, it's I got to thank like everyone who comes on here, because if it takes a lot of time to talk this all out, prepare for it, and basically have to book out a night, like an evening, just to come on call and record. So
I think we should stick to just 3. I think 4 is just too many people. I know you like 4. I like 4 people.
I actually don't mind. Like, it just depends on what the people bring to the power rankings. Like, I'm quite happy sitting back a little bit in some of these power rankings and listen to what other people have to say. But I think that's it for this week. We'll be back week 6, hopefully. We'll see how this week goes. Second half of the season.
Yeah.
Best of luck to you
Johto Division.
Best of luck to you, Bryan, and everyone else. And I'll see you all guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Peace out, guys.